Chapter 32-33. Ji Tianqing's muttering and sneering were heard clearly by Yi Wuji and the others. Even Lan who was being attacked by Yan Tiangang and the others nearby, heard it. After all, they were all upper divine lords, top experts. Lan body stiffened and her eyes widened as she looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. At that moment she was absent-minded. His muddle-headed mind seemed to have been struck by a bolt of lightning, and he instantly calmed down. She was stunned as she stared at Ji Tianqing, great waves surging in her heart. 2 lines of bloody tears instantly burst out from his eyes and slid down his cheeks. How do you know I? She muttered to herself, her heart filled with shock and bitterness. After 10,000 years, she finally saw the light of day again and heard that familiar name. Lana. Her name. Only that person had the right to call her that. At this moment, an absurd thought appeared in the depths of Lan heart. Could it be him? Did he come back? He didn't abandon me, didn't forget our promise? But why did he change his appearance? Did I remember wrongly? Impossible. Even if 10,000 years have passed, I definitely won't forget his appearance. He must have changed. Something must have happened to him. Lan mind raced and she actually thought that Ji Tianqing was Divine King Azure Jade. Of course, this was only her thought and guess. She wasn't sure. But at this moment, a sudden sky full of light blades and divine arts interrupted her thoughts. Bang! Bang bang! Swoosh swoosh swoosh! Lan was instantly drowned by the sky full of light blades. Her body shook violently as blood splattered all over her body. She was sent flying in a sorry state. She was still in midair, but she had already spat out a mouthful of blood and let out a painful groan. Clearly, Yan Tiangang and the others had seized the opportunity and successfully ambushed her while she was absent-minded. She was severely injured by this attack. Her injuries were even worse. Blood flowed out of her body and her strength was quickly fading. Yan Tiangang and the others took the opportunity to surround her and launch another round of fierce attacks on her. Lan was suppressed and her injuries kept worsening. She could only retreat and dodge, unable to fight back at all. On the other hand, the battle between Ji Tianqing and Yi Wuji and the others was beyond everyone's expectations. Facing the siege of a dozen divine lords, he smiled disdainfully and pointed his sword at the sky. Sky-destroying sword array. Instantly, 20,000 light spots appeared in the sky like a meteor shower. Whoosh 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 whoosh. 20,000 divine giant swords, carrying with them the power to destroy everything, instantly descended upon the scene. With Ji Tianqing as the center, the area within a radius of 100 miles was enveloped. Whoosh whoosh. Sword light crisscrossed, instantly forming a sword formation, sealing this area. Yi Wuji, Grand Elder, and more than a dozen Sir Gods were all suppressed by the sword formation. Everyone instantly felt the pressure increase explosively. Not only did it become difficult for them to move, but the circulation of their divine power was also abnormally blocked, and their combat prowess was greatly reduced. That was not all. Tens of thousands of giant divine swords poured down like rain. 10,000 swords shuttled back and forth, forming a storm of swords that enveloped many divine lords. Whoosh! Whoosh! Those divine lords were in trouble. Whoosh! 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 Several divine lords were shredded into pieces by the sword storm and even their godheads were shattered. Then 2 elders of the Hetian sect were also shrouded by hundreds of sword lights and shredded into pieces. Only Yi Wuji, Grand Elder and a few divine lords were still struggling in the sword array. But as time went by, their divine power was quickly consumed and their combat power was weakening. Their injuries kept worsening. Ji Tianqing stood in the sword array and activated the power of the sword array to kill everyone. Yi Wuji, Grand Elder and the others struggled with their injured bodies and desperately rushed toward Ji Tianqing. Let's kill him together. As long as we kill him, the sword array will collapse. Everyone was well aware that it was almost impossible to break this sword formation in a short period of time. Only killing Ji Tianqing was the simplest and most effective way. On the surface, they were only 20 miles away from Ji Tianqing. Normally, he would be able to teleport in front of Ji Tianqing with a single thought. But now they couldn't teleport in the sword array and could only fly. It was only 20 miles, but it was more difficult than reaching the sky. When they finally reached Ji Tianqing, A few more divine lords were shredded into pieces by the swords. Yi Wuji, Grand Elder, and the masters of the two families who were lucky enough to survive were also badly injured and very weak. Damn bastard, he is so strong. How strong is he? How can he kill so many divine lords? Has he surpassed the divine lord realm and reached the divine king realm? No matter how strong he is, we are already here and we can kill him soon. While their hearts were filled with shock and fear, the four powerhouses also staked everything on this one attack. They exploded with their strongest power and launched a fatal attack on Ji Tianqing. However, when all kinds of divine powers shrouded Ji Tianqing, his body became transparent and blurry. The world-destroying divine ability passed through him without any delay. It didn't cause any damage to him. Seeing this, the four experts were dumbfounded. Dumbfounded? What kind of evil art is this? Yi Wuji was shocked. Grand Elder was also shocked and exclaimed, "How is this possible?" The next moment, Ji Tianqing activated the sword array with all his strength and formed 4 storms with 8,000 giant swords. They fell from the sky and shrouded the 4 experts. Swish, swish, swish. Sword radiance flashed and sword chi surged. The destructive storm of swords shredded the 4 experts crazily. In the bright sword radiance, there was blood and debris splashing out, mixed with the groans and screams of the people. At this moment, Ji Tianqing didn't care about the 4 experts anymore. He flew out of the sword array without looking back and attacked Prince Lian in an invisible state. Because the 4 storm of swords had gathered all the power of the sky punishment sword array, Yi Wuji and the Grand Elder would definitely die. There was no way they could survive. In the distance, Prince Lian only saw him using the sword array to fight with Yi Wuji and the others. Prince Lian didn't expect the battle to end so quickly. Swish! A second later, Ji Tianqing teleported 300 miles and appeared behind Prince Lian. At this time, Grand Prince Lian had just swallowed a few divine pills and was refining them while keeping an eye on the situation on the battlefield. Yan Tiangang and more than 30 divine lords had beaten Lan and she was on the verge of death. Prince Lian was a bit comforted. The only thing he was worried about was whether Yi Wuji and the others in the sword array could kill Ji Tianqing. Just as he was filled with anxiety and worry, a dazzling divine light suddenly erupted behind him. An extremely cold and deadly energy immediately enveloped his body, making him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. Swish! He subconsciously turned around and saw the sword light that could destroy heaven and earth growing larger and larger in front of him. There was also a familiar face looking at him with a half-smile. At this moment, Prince Lian was terrified. Chapter 32-34. Boom! There was a deafening sound. A ball of 5-colored divine light bloomed in the night sky like a lotus. Prince Lian, who was riddled with wounds, also exploded into pieces amidst the divine light that filled the sky. Countless flowers of blood splattered everywhere. Ji Tianqing's sword destroyed his divine body on the spot. Even his divine spark suffered serious injuries. Cracks appeared on it and blood splashed out. His consciousness became blurry and dizzy, and his godhead was carried away by the waves, flying into the distance. Yi Wuji, the Great Elder, and the others could not see this scene. They were in the sky punishment sword array, suppressed by the blade storm and couldn't even protect themselves. Yan Tiangang and the other divine sovereigns noticed that Grand Prince Lian had been ambushed and saw Ji Tianqing's figure. Everyone turned pale with fright and cried out in alarm. But no one could save Prince Lian. There was no time to save him. Then Ji Tianqing caught up and slashed at Prince Lian's divine spark with all his might. Crack! Grand Prince Lian's godhead crumbled on the spot, leaving behind a dozen pieces. Prince Lian was dead. With a wave of his hand, Ji Tianqing collected the godhead fragments into his pouch. At the same time, the 4 divine emperors in the sky punishment sword array were also at the last moment. The first to be shredded into pieces by the sword light was the patriarchs of the 2 aristocratic families. Then the Grand Elder's divine artifact collapsed and his divine body was crushed. His divine spark was also shattered. Yi Wuji held on until the end. He used all kinds of divine artifacts and divine powers, but he still couldn't stop the thousands of swords. He was soon crushed into pieces. A dozen divine spark pieces also fell in the sword array along with the rain of blood. Everyone in the sword array was dead. The sky punishment sword array gradually stopped, and the 20,000 giant swords floated in the air. Yin Tiangang and the other divine emperors could see what was going on inside the sword array. Everyone knew that Yi Wuji and a dozen divine emperors had gone to kill Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was outside the sword array and had just killed Prince Lian. However, the sword formation that had stopped operating was empty. There was not a single person in sight. Yi Wuji and the dozen divine emperors had all disappeared. Yin Tiangang and the other 30 Sir Gods were shocked and terrified. Many people could not help but cry out in surprise. Oh my God! Sect Master Yi and the rest, were they all killed by that bastard? The sword formation has stopped operating. It's empty inside. Sect leader Yi and the others must have met with misfortune. How is this possible? Sect Master Yi and more than a dozen experts joined forces, but they still couldn't kill him? And he was killed instead? Who the hell is that guy? How can his methods be so terrifying? Compared to that ferocious beast, this kid is even more terrifying. Everyone be careful. After he killed sect leader Yi and the others, he'll come after us. Many Sir Gods realized that something was amiss. They quickly retracted their defenses and were on guard against Ji Tianqing. Everyone slowed down their attacks and diverted their attention to Ji Tianqing. Instantly, the pressure on Lan Er was greatly reduced. Ji Tianqing was in no hurry to attack. He first flew into the heaven-vanquishing sword formation, and put the godhead fragments of the dozen Sir Gods into his spatial ring. Then, he flew toward Yin Tiangang and the others at a moderate pace. When he was 100,000 feet away from them, he stopped in the air and stared at the Sir Gods with an indifferent expression. The Sir Gods acted as though they were facing a great enemy. They had to suppress Lan Er and guard against Ji Tianqing. Yin Tiangang also stopped attacking Lan Er. He looked at Ji Tianqing with a solemn expression and said in a deep voice, I know you're the god of slaughter Tianqing from before. Kid, you have a grudge against Prince Lian and are at odds with the Hetian sect. This is a grudge between the two of you. However, Great Yan's imperial family and the other major sects and clans have no grudge against you. So you'd better stop before going too far. Otherwise, we can only fight to the death. No one had expected that Yin Tiangang would actually say such words. Although his words sounded like a threat to Ji Tianqing, they were, in truth, fearful of him. If it wasn't necessary, the people from the major sects and clans were like Yin Tiangang. They didn't want to provoke Ji Tianqing. Everyone's attitudes and opinions were the same. The leaders echoed Yin Tiangong's words. Ji Tianqing revealed a smile when he saw everyone's reaction, and he muttered to himself. Fortunately, this group of old fellows aren't stubborn and know how to judge the situation. This makes it easy to deal with. Hence, he pointed at Lan Er who was surrounded and said to Yin Tiangang and the others, that's not a beast. She's also a member of Great Yan's divine race. She only became like this because of an accident. You have no grudge against her. You only entered the Green Jade Palace to seek wealth and fortuitous encounters. Even if you pay a painful price and kill her today, you won't gain anything. How about this? If you let her go, I won't make things difficult for you. We won't have anything to do with each other. What do you think? This? Yin Tiangang immediately hesitated and didn't say anything. The divine lords of the major sects and clans were also tempted by Ji Tianqing's words. They all sent voice transmissions to Yin Tiangang to persuade him. Forefather, that kid is right. We don't have to fight this beast to the death. That kid has no grudge against us. As long as we agree to his conditions, we won't have to fight with him. This old man can see that the brat wants to save this ferocious beast. He doesn't want to fight with us unless it's necessary. Old ancestor, let's release this beast and mind our own business with that brat. Yin Tiangang frowned inwardly when he heard everyone's persuasion. He hurriedly used his consciousness to explain to everyone. How can I not understand what you're saying? But have you thought about it? That kid sneaked into the Green Jade Palace when we weren't paying attention. If there were any inheritances or treasures in the palace, he would have gotten them long ago. Now that the palace has been destroyed, there's nothing left. Even if we don't fight with him, we won't be able to find anything valuable in the palace. Furthermore, he cares so much about this beast. He must have some other motives. This beast has been sealed here for 10,000 years. It must have something to do with the Green Jade Divine King. How can we let it go? After Yan Tiangong's analysis, many divine lords came to a realization and felt that something was amiss. Everyone also began to hesitate if they should let Lan Er go. If they let Lan Er go, they naturally wouldn't fight with Ji Tianqing. However, it was very likely that they would return empty-handed after coming here. If they didn't let Lan Er go, they might discover the secret of the Green Jade Palace from Lan Er. However, they would have to fight with Ji Tianqing. At that time they would have to pay a terrible price. Just as everyone was hesitating and wavering, Ji Tianqing saw through everyone's thoughts and immediately sneered. Since you are unwilling and are still hesitating, I'll help you make the decision. As his voice fell, he brazenly waved the Burial of Heaven sword, and sent out a sword beam that covered the sky towards the dozen divine lords. Chapter 32-35. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sky was covered by the sword light and the space was in chaos. The dozen Sir Gods that were covered by the sword light were so frightened that their expressions changed drastically. Their eyes were filled with fear. They finally saw the God of Massacre's way of doing things. He was decisive and ruthless. Of course, it was useless to say that now. They had no choice but to retreat with all their might and cast defensive divine arts to block the sword light. Bam! 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 The sword light hit a golden shield and made a loud noise. Countless divine light shards splashed. Only 6 Sir Gods were safe and sound. The other 8 Sir Gods were sent flying. Blood spurted out of their bodies and they screamed in pain. Although they had kept their lives and their divine bodies were not destroyed, their injuries were much worse. However, their injuries were even more severe, and their battle prowess had plummeted. That was Ji Tianqing's warning to everyone. He didn't attack again after the first move. However, Yan Tiangang and the other Sir Gods felt humiliated. They were so angry that they were trembling. Bastard! You are too arrogant. You want to kill us because of a disagreement? Do you really think that no one in the Great Yan Empire can defeat you? Kid, you forced us to do this. Yan Tiangang and the other divine sovereigns attacked Ji Tianqing while yelling and cursing at him. Everyone gave it their all, each of them using their own unique divine arts, releasing divine arts that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, bombarding him from the sky. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and chuckled. They are indeed a group of high and mighty people who are used to abusing their power. You would rather sacrifice more lives than be looked down upon and humiliated. As he spoke, he cast the dragon elephant divine fist with his left hand, and swung the Burial of Heaven with his right hand. Boom! The mountain-sized dragon elephant shadow smashed towards Yan Tiangang, and the others with an unstoppable power that could destroy everything. The Burial of Heaven also swung the Sword of Heaven, and used Galaxy Flow Break to slash at the Sir Gods. Bam! 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 The divine spells used by the two sides collided, creating a deafening sound that reverberated between heaven and earth. Hundreds of divine ability lights and shadows were shattered. Divine light fragments burst out and filled the sky, scattering in all directions. Ji Tianqing was knocked back thousands of meters. His white robe and black hair fluttered in the wind, and his face was slightly pale. After all, he was facing over 30 high divine lords. It was already very impressive that he hadn't been killed by the combined attacks of the other party. Of course, the outcome of the 30 over Sir Gods was even more miserable. More than half of the divine lords were swept up by the sword beams and sword chi. They were sent flying 1,000 feet away, their injuries even worse. Only Yan Tiangang and the leaders of the various sects and families were safe and sound. The battle formation that everyone had formed was destroyed. Ji Tianqing took advantage of the situation to pursue and attack. Lan Er also seized the opportunity to ambush and kill a few severely injured Sir Gods. Yan Tiangong's side had over 30 people. Compared to Ji Tianqing and Lan Er, they had an absolute advantage. They had more than 10 times the number of people. However, the situation on the battlefield was completely opposite. It was Ji Tianqing and Lan Er who attacked Yan Tiangang and the others in a pincer attack. In less than 20 breaths of time, more than 10 Sir Gods had died at the hands of Ji Tianqing and Lan Er. Even Yan Tiangang was heavily injured. He was in a very sorry state. At this point, Yan Tiangang and the other Sir Gods were in complete despair. If they continued to fight, they would all die here. Moreover, they wouldn't be able to kill Ji Tianqing and Lan Er. Therefore, they could only endure the humiliation and anger, throw away their dignity and face, and flee in a sorry state. Yin Tiangang and the leaders of the four sects and families brought up the rear, tenaciously resisting Ji Tianqing and Lan Er's attacks. The other 20 Sir Gods fled without looking back. In the blink of an eye, they rushed out of the divine palace and flew into the sea of clouds. Seeing that the Sir Gods had fled the divine palace, Yin Tiangang and the four sect leaders turned and fled towards the divine palace. The 20,000 divine spirits who were guarding outside the sea of clouds surrounded the divine palace, anxiously and worriedly waiting. In the past few hours, they had been hearing earth-shaking explosions and explosions coming from the divine palace. They didn't need to look to know that those were the sounds of many experts fighting. However, the battle in the divine palace had lasted for so long and showed no signs of stopping. No matter how anxious and worried the elites of the various factions were, they had to obediently guard outside the divine palace. They didn't dare to barge in. Finally, under the worried, expectant and anxious gazes of the 20,000 divine spirits, several figures flew out of the divine palace. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh! They were several high Sir Gods from different factions. They were all covered in blood and looked like they were on the verge of death. They were like stray dogs fleeing in panic. They didn't have the dignity and nobility of the past. Seeing this scene, the 20,000 divine spirits were dumbfounded. Countless people were shocked and aghast. Everyone did not expect that those powerful high divine lords would also be defeated so miserably. Soon after, a dozen or so high-level divine lords covered in blood flew out of the divine palace like bolts of lightning. They flew across the sea of clouds as fast as lightning and fled into the distance. They even shouted loudly, "Run! Leave this place! What are you waiting for? Run! Run! Otherwise everyone will die!" The shouts of the many Sir Gods reverberated in the sea of clouds. The 20,000 gods were already shocked, and when they heard the blood-sobbing cries, they were even more terrified and at a loss for what to do. The elites of many factions subconsciously turned and fled, distancing themselves from the Green Jade Divine Palace. Only the top 10 sects and clans hesitated for a moment before deciding to observe the situation. At this moment, another 5 figures flew out of the Divine Palace. Swoosh! Swoosh swoosh! The divine spirits focused and saw that it was Yin Tiangang, and the leaders of the 4 major sects and clans. These 5 high Sir Gods could be said to be the strongest experts in the empire. No one had expected that even they would be covered in wounds and fleeing in a sorry state. With this, the last bit of hope of the divine spirits was extinguished. Seeing Yin Tiangang and the others flee, everyone outside the divine palace turned and fled without a care for their own safety. After a few breaths, the area outside the divine palace was empty. Not a single person could be seen. At the same time, Lana rushed to the divine palace's entrance with blood-red flames of killing intent burning all over her body. Her eyes were bloodshot. She did not care that her divine body was on the verge of collapse, and that she could faint at any moment. She still wanted to chase after those Sir Gods. However, Ji Tianqing released a giant golden palm and held her firmly, stopping her. Don't chase a cornered enemy. Lan Er was imprisoned by the giant golden palm, and could not move even if she struggled with all her might. Hearing Ji Tianqing's warning, she shouted with killing intent, "Let me go!" Ji Tianqing waved his hand and shot out a ray of divine light, closing the divine palace's entrance. He grabbed Lan Er with the giant golden palm and walked into the divine palace. In your current state, if you really chase after them, you will die in less than 100 breaths. Chapter 32-36. Lan Er's emotions had fluctuated greatly. She had suffered too much shock and was a little crazy and out of control. But now that the battle was over, the Green Jade Palace was quiet. She was also captured by Ji Tianqing and could not move at all. It was even more difficult for her to escape. After a while, she gradually calmed down. The blood-red flames that were emitting from her body also gradually extinguished. "All right, you can let go of me now." She lowered her head and said in a low voice. Seeing that her emotions had indeed stabilized, Ji Tianqing removed the giant golden palm. Lan Er did not act rashly. Her body was bent as she stood on the ruins. She lowered her head and coughed and gasped for breath. Her injuries were very serious. Her body was covered with wounds that were so deep that her bones could be seen. If her injuries were more serious, her divine body would have collapsed. Moreover, her divine soul was already mutated and flawed. After suffering such serious injuries, she was even more on the verge of death. At this moment, she only felt that her entire body was cold and her strength was extremely weak. Her eyes were dark and she could faint at any time. Of course, Ji Tianqing could see how serious her injuries were. Seeing that Lan was almost unable to stand steadily, he quickly took out 2 divine pills and handed them to Lan. Take these 2 divine pills and stabilize your injuries first. Otherwise, your divine path foundation will be destroyed. Lan was stunned for a moment. She did not take the 2 divine pills. She slowly raised her head. Her eyes were stained with blood and tears. She looked at Ji Tianqing with a complicated expression. Even though her consciousness was getting dizzier and her eyes were getting blurry, she tried her best to open her eyes and tried her best to see Ji Tianqing's face clearly. Seeing her reaction, Ji Tianqing could not help but urge, "You are already so injured. Can you take the pills first and we can talk about other things? Don't worry, those 2 pills are definitely fine. If I wanted to harm you, I could kill you with a few moves. Why would I do anything to the pills?" Lan was still unmoved. She did not look at the 2 pills. She stared at Ji Tianqing with hazy eyes. She shook her head gently and said in a low and hoarse voice, "Who are you? Why do you know my name? Why did you save me?" Ji Tianqing was rather helpless, but he couldn't tell her the truth, so he could only ask, "If I tell you the answer, will you take the 2 divine pills?" Actually, those 2 divine pills were refined by Divine King Greenjade specifically to save Lan. Previously, Ji Tianqing had taken away all the treasures in the stone house, which naturally included those divine pills and miraculous medicines. Lan thought for a moment and nodded. Ji Tianqing felt slightly comforted and explained, "My name is Tianqing. I came here in pursuit of my enemy and accidentally saw the books and jade scrolls left behind by the Green Jade Deity King. Only then did I know." "Heh, is that so?" Lan-er's tone was somewhat sorrowful as she sneered a few times. The look in her eyes became even more complicated. There was mockery and contempt, as well as disappointment and disappointment. Ji Tianqing felt a headache coming on. He thought to himself, "This guy must have misunderstood, right? I wonder what she's thinking." Fortunately, Lan didn't say much. She waved her claws and grabbed the 2 golden divine pills before swallowing them. Swoosh! When those 2 divine pills entered her body, they immediately blossomed with a dazzling golden light, bursting forth with a vast and mighty divine power. Lan's body immediately trembled. Thousands of wisps of black fog and blood energy splattered out all over her body. Her body also started trembling violently. She gave a somewhat painful muffled groan. Her eyes gradually closed and she fell unconscious. But before she fainted, her eyes widened, glaring at Ji Tianqing with a sharp glint. She shouted coldly, "Don't think of lying to me. It's you." After saying that, she fell completely unconscious and collapsed on the ruins, not moving anymore. Ji Tianqing frowned helplessly and muttered to himself, "She wouldn't have received too much of a shock and already gone crazy, right?" Although he said so verbally, he was very conflicted in his heart and fell into hesitation. Originally, Lan and Divine King Greenjade's matter had nothing to do with him. He also did not care too much about Lan's life and death. He could just turn a blind eye and leave. After leaving the Green Jade Divine Palace, he went to find a place to enter seclusion and cultivate, hurriedly refining the many Divine Lord Divine Spark fragments. He would be able to break through to the 9th level Divine Lord realm very soon. But he had the fate of meeting Divine King Greenjade once before. Furthermore, he sowed good karma. After coming to the Green Jade Divine Palace, he also learned about Divine King Greenjade and Lan's story. Toward these 2 people with bitter fates, he more or less had some sympathy in his heart. Moreover, he mistakenly barged into the underground secret chamber and severed the chains suppressing Lan. This led to the great battle later on. Furthermore, he even took away Divine King Greenjade's treasures and materials. From an emotional point of view, he could not leave her in the lurch. Now there were 2 choices in front of him. 1. Leave the Green Jade Divine Palace from here on and ignore Lanner's life and death. Anyway, she also consumed the divine pill refined by Divine King Green Jade. Furthermore, her injuries would not really be fatal. Even if he did not help her, she would not die either. It was just that her injuries were too severe. Her divine body might shatter, and her divine Tao foundation might collapse too. 2. Follow the kindness in his heart, and try to help Lanner treat her injuries. Only then could he have a clear conscience. But doing so might cause Lanner to misunderstand and might also cause some unnecessary trouble. After hesitating for a moment, Ji Tianqing finally made a decision. I still have to help. Leaving her in the lurch is not my character. As he spoke, he used his divine sense to call out to Yun Yao and Ji Ku, who were in the distorted space. Unfortunately, Ji Ku was at a critical juncture of his closed-door cultivation and could not be disturbed. Only Yun Yao could leave. She had just broken through not long ago, and was circulating her energy to nourish her foundation. Hearing Ji Tianqing's call, she left the Jiutian Tenju Tower and appeared in front of Ji Tianqing. Tianqing, what's the matter? Yun Yao, who was wearing a moon-white dress, was colder and more beautiful than usual. Ji Tianqing pointed at Lanner, who was 10 steps away, and explained to Yun Yao, I'm in the Green Jade Divine Palace now. That ferocious-looking beast is Divine King Green Jade's lover. He told Yun Yao the ins and outs of the matter, as well as Lanner's true identity. After hearing this, Yun Yao understood what he meant. Tianqing, you want to treat Lanner's injuries, but you don't want her to misunderstand, so you asked me to help you to avoid suspicion, right? Ji Tianqing nodded. Yun Yao nodded slightly and said in a gentle tone, Tianqing, you don't have to avoid suspicion. No matter what you do, we will believe you. Ji Tianqing smiled bitterly and said, Of course you believe me, but this Lanner can't. She's confused and has already misunderstood. As expected, Lanner, who was originally unconscious and in a blurred state, shouted in a sad and intermittent voice as if she was sleep-talking, Green Jade, you're back. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Why did you hide and change your appearance to see me? Could it be that you're tired of don't want to see a monster like me? Hearing her words, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao looked at each other. Ji Tianqing spread his hands helplessly and said, I told you it's a big misunderstanding. Bookhouse Reading Website. Chapter 32-37. Lan Er's obsession was too deep. Now that she was unconscious, her consciousness was muddled. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao couldn't explain anything to her at this time. The two of them could only take the unconscious Lan Er and fly into the depths of the Green Jade Palace. At the edge of the space thousands of miles away, the mountain and the stone house on top of the mountain were still intact. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao landed here and put Lan Er in the secret chamber. Then Ji Tianqing used his secret skill to treat Lan Er's injuries. Yun Yao stood guard at the side. She took care of Lan Er and also helped Ji Tianqing to protect him. As time passed, the bloodstains and wounds on Lan Er's body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Ji Tianqing spent half a day to treat her external injuries. Then he began to treat her internal injuries. The internal injuries were more troublesome. It would take at least a few days. As for the injuries to the divine soul, they were the most troublesome. They could only be ranked last. Just like that, time passed day after day. Ji Tianqing kept using his secret skill. He didn't stop and didn't feel tired. The divine power in this Green Jade Palace was incomparably abundant. It was as if it was inexhaustible. After a full 5 days, Lan Er's internal injuries were stabilized. Although she was still unconscious, her injuries wouldn't worsen. However, her injuries would not continue to worsen. Her life and the foundation of the divine path were both preserved. Ji Tianqing spent another 8 days using his secret skill to treat her divine soul injuries. Once the injury to her soul stabilized, she would be fine as a whole. Ji Tianqing took out 2 divine pills for her to consume. Then she went into hibernation. The divine power in her body automatically circulated and healed her injuries. After finishing all of this, Ji Tianqing finally stopped his training. He looked at Yun Yao and said with concern, Yao Yao, you've been protecting me for more than 10 days. You must be tired. Go and rest. Yun Yao quickly shook her head and persuaded, I'm just watching from the side. I'm not tired. You've been using your secret skill for so long. You're the most tired person. Go and rest. I'll stay here and watch over her. If she wakes up, you'll cause a misunderstanding again." Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and nodded. "That's good too. After this battle and healing her for more than 10 days, I feel that my strength has broken through again. I'm about to reach a bottleneck. Anyway, she's in hibernation. She won't wake up for at least a month. I'll take advantage of this time to cultivate in seclusion in the divine pagoda and strive to reach the next level." Yun Yao revealed a gratified smile and nodded, and then go quickly. Ji Tianqing didn't delay any longer, and he withdrew the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda before his figure flashed and entered it. Yun Yao reached out with her right hand and grabbed the divine pagoda that was floating in the air. She took it into her palm. Then she sat down cross-legged on the spot. Not far to her left, Lan was lying motionlessly on the ground. She was in a state of hibernation. Once Green Jade Palace woke up, she would know immediately. If Green Jade Palace went crazy again, she could quickly retreat or call Ji Tianqing for help. After Ji Tianqing entered the distorted space-time, he didn't start cultivating immediately. He flew to the bottom of the Blood Flame Sacred Tree and flew around the sacred tree. The result was as he expected. In the previous battle, countless Divine Lord powerhouses had fallen. The Blood Flame Sacred Tree had absorbed a huge amount of blood energy and divine soul power. It had obviously grown again. Even more than half of the bare branches had sprouted purple sprouts, showing a thriving state. In the past, the Blood Flame Sacred Tree was only 100,000 feet tall. Its branches were bare. But now the sacred tree had reached a height of more than 12,000 feet. 70 to 80% of its branches had sprouted shoots. In fact, 30% of the branches had sprouted purple leaves. Overall, not only had the Blood Flame Sacred Tree grown taller, it had also become more luxuriant. Its divine power aura had become more vigorous. The blazing blood flames had also become more violent and dazzling. Ji Tianqing walked around the sacred tree and returned to the starting point. He stopped and revealed a gratified smile. He murmured, "Although this sacred tree is still quasi-king rank at the moment, but with its growth speed, I reckon that it will transform into a true king rank sacred tree in a few years. At that time, this sacred tree will definitely shine with an even more dazzling brilliance." Ji Tianqing had strong confidence and expectations regarding this. He looked around just now. Jiku was at the critical moment of breaking through to the 4th level Divine Lord realm. This was a hurdle for her to ascend from a low-level Divine Lord to a middle-level Divine Lord. Of course it wasn't that easy, but Ji Tianqing had confidence in her talent and believed that she would break through soon. White Dragon, Ji Wushuang, Black Dragon, and Qin Yu were also focused on cultivating. Now they were all low-level Divine Lords. Their strength and foundation weren't deep enough. They knew that Ji Tianqing's cultivation speed was too heaven-defying. It was something that they would never be able to catch up to in this lifetime. Therefore, their targets were Jiku and Yun Yao. After all, Yun Yao had already broken through to the 4th level Divine Lord realm. Jiku was about to reach the 4th level Divine Lord realm too. They didn't want to be left too far behind. They tried their best to increase their strength so that they could protect themselves. In the future, in this dangerous and unpredictable divine world, they would be able to protect themselves and not cause trouble for Ji Tianqing. Seeing that everything was going well, and the situation was developing in a good direction, Ji Tianqing was gratified. Therefore, he sat cross-legged under the Blood Flame Sacred Tree and began to count the spoils of war. This time he was the final winner in the Green Jade Palace. The 50 factions were the first to discover the Green Jade Palace and spent 10 years to unlock the palace's layers of seals and open the palace's doors. In the end, more than 90% of the more than 400 divine lords from the 50 factions had died. In the end, less than 50 escaped the Green Jade Palace alive. Yet, they paid such a terrible price and didn't get any benefits at all. And Ji Tianqing monopolized all the treasures. His gains came from 2 aspects. One was the monarch-level materials, divine pills and cultivation technique manuals left behind by Divine King Azure Jade. The second was the divine spark fragments that were scattered in the ruins after countless divine lord experts died on the battlefield. As for those monarch-level divine artifacts and equipment, Ji Tianqing couldn't be bothered to collect them. He wouldn't use the divine pills and materials left behind by Divine King Azure Jade for his closed-door cultivation this time. He only needed to refine the divine spark fragments of those divine lord experts and a large number of origin stones and divine stones. It would be enough. An hour later, Ji Tianqing counted the spoils of war and came to a conclusion. There were a total of 132 divine spark fragments. Among them, there were more than 90 high-rank divine lord fragments, and more than 40 middle-rank divine lord fragments. Although a portion of the divine spark fragments were incomplete, that didn't affect Ji Tianqing's refinement and absorption of divine Tao laws. After counting, he muttered to himself, "Speaking of which, I have to thank Lan for being able to collect so many divine spark fragments. I didn't kill that many divine lords. Most of them were killed by her." Chapter 32-38. This was the truth. In terms of the number of divine monarchs killed, Ji Tianqing naturally could not compare to Lan. However, those Lan killed were those divine monarchs who were already seriously injured and were not strong enough. Although the number of divine monarchs Ji Tianqing killed was few, they were all the top powerhouses who had survived until the end. For example, Yu Wuji, Prince Lian, Heavenly Union Sect's Grand Elder, and the leaders of the two large sects and families. Very soon, he eliminated these distracting thoughts and began to work on refining the divine spark fragments. Under the sacred tree it was quiet. Billions of branches emitted wisps of blood-colored divine power, pouring into Ji Tianqing and the others, assisting them in their cultivation. Time passed quietly. One divine spark fragment after another was refined by Ji Tianqing for his own use. He had already reached the peak of the 8th stage realm. As long as he broke through the bottleneck, he could ascend to the 9th stage of the divine monarch realm. Now his strength was soaring rapidly. The number of divine Tao laws condensed was also constantly increasing. This made his strength grow continuously, becoming stronger and stronger. Imperceptibly, he broke through the bottleneck again and again, advancing towards the 9th stage of the divine monarch realm. 1 day, 5 days, 10 days. Ji Tianqing forgot the passage of time, immersed in the process of constantly becoming stronger. Unknowingly, for years had passed. He had refined all 132 pieces of the God horoscope pieces. From these divine spark fragments, he absorbed 30 types of divine Tao laws, condensing them into his own divine spark. In this way, the number of divine Tao laws he possessed reached a shocking 340. Back then, when the number of laws he grasped broke through the 300 mark, it created an invisible miracle. Now, he took another step forward on the path of miracles. In addition, his divine power also reached the limit of the 8th stage realm, finally breaking through the bottleneck. On this day, his entire body bloomed with sacred golden light, bursting forth with a vast and mighty aura. The soaring golden light condensed into 9 dragon shadows, lingering above the blood-flame sacred tree for 2 days before dissipating. Without a doubt, Ji Tianqing had naturally broken through when the conditions were right. He finally reached the 9th stage of the divine monarch realm, not far from the divine monarch realm. After successfully breaking through, he cultivated in seclusion for another 3 months to stabilize his foundation of the divine Tao. By the time he finished cultivating, his strength had increased by more than 5 times, and his aura had become even more mysterious and restrained. He got up and left the distorted space-time, flying out of the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Tower. Shua! In the next moment, he appeared in the secret chamber and stood beside Yunyao. And at this moment, the scene in the secret room was something he did not expect. Yunyao was still as calm as before. She sat cross-legged on the ground, maintaining the posture of circulating her energy and adjusting her breath. However, she did not circulate her energy. Instead, she opened her eyes and looked at Lan who was on her left. Lan who should have been lying on the ground in a dormant state, stood up. She arched her back slightly and stared at Yunyao with a cold and wary gaze, revealing a strong hostility. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing immediately frowned. Without any hesitation, he took a step forward and shielded Yunyao behind him. This matter started because of him. If anything happened to Yunyao or if she was hurt by Lan he would never forgive himself. Fortunately, Lan had no intention of attacking. Ji Tianqing's appearance broke the cold atmosphere in the secret chamber. Lan Er and Yun Yao's gazes gathered on him. Ji Tianqing frowned and looked at Lan Er. He asked, "After you took the divine pill, didn't you have to sleep for a month before waking up? It's only been more than 20 days. Why did you wake up in advance? During the period when you were unconscious, Yao Yao had been taking care of you. It's fine if you don't thank her, but you're hostile to her?" Lan Er's attitude towards Yun Yao made him a little unhappy, so he questioned her. Unexpectedly, not only did Lan Er not feel guilty, but she also glanced at Yun Yao with a complicated expression. Then she glanced coldly at Ji Tianqing and smiled bitterly. Her voice was a little sad and cold. "Yao Yao? Haha. Are you so protective of her?" "Yes. She's a devastatingly beautiful woman, and I am just an ugly and ferocious monster." "I understand." Ji Tianqing was speechless. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Hey, I'm Tianqing and this is my wife Yun Yao. What nonsense are you talking about?" Why would Lan Er listen to him? She only heard the two key words, and tears immediately gushed out of her eyes. She sneered crazily. "Wife? Haha. Back then you also said such precious words to me. Now the person you call your wife has become her." While laughing crazily, Lan Er staggered back as if she was extremely weak and almost fell to the ground. Ji Tianqing was even more depressed. He wanted to explain again. At this time Yun Yao reached out and pulled him, shaking her head at him. "Tianqing, Lan Er is not clear-headed now. She's muddle-headed. Don't say any more. She was abandoned by her lover, suppressed for 10,000 years, and suffered such heavy injuries. Of course, this series of heavy blows will make her emotional. Let her calm down and then we'll explain to her." After listening to Yun Yao's advice, Ji Tianqing naturally nodded and agreed. "All right, you're better at this kind of thing. I'll leave it to you." After speaking, Ji Tianqing took a step back and reached out to pull Yun Yao up from the ground. Yun Yao stood on the spot and looked at Lan Er calmly. Her hands formed a divine seal, releasing thousands of strands of cold moonlight. "Miss Lan Er, your old friend is still here, but he hasn't returned. We all know that you're infatuated with him and have no regrets. You've sacrificed too much and suffered too much. But please don't be blinded by resentment," Yun Yao said gently. Her voice was like the spring wind and rain, moisturizing everything silently, especially the thousands of strands of cold moonlight she quietly released, which had the effect of soothing and cleansing the soul. Lan Er, who had broken down emotionally and was in a state of madness, quieted down a lot. Her emotions gradually calmed down. Her crying gradually stopped. She leaned against the wall and slowly fell to the ground. She lowered her head weakly and stared blankly at the ground. She didn't say anything. Yun Yao continued to use her divine abilities and secret techniques to soothe Lan Er's emotions and make her sober up. At the same time, she started to guide and enlighten Lan Er patiently. "Miss Lan Er, your lover is Chao Qingyu. He's also known as God King Blue Jade. No matter how many thousands of years or billions of years have passed, you must still remember him, right?" Haha. Lan Er just sneered and refused to answer this question. Because the answer was without a doubt. Yun Yao's tone and speed didn't change. She continued, "Chao Qingyu is a citizen of the Great Yin Empire. He's the God King of the Great Yin divine race. You should be familiar with his bloodline, spirit, and aura. How can you be wrong?" Lan Er shook her head and said in a low voice, "So what if I'm familiar with him? Time will change everything. Spirit, bloodline, and appearance will all change, right?" Of course, that was because she was the best example. Chapter 32-39. Yun Yao was stunned by Lan Er's words. She did not know how to refute her. After a moment of silence, she continued, "Even if there are changes, it's impossible for him to become a completely different person. He's a great Yin God King, and Tianqing is a human who has yet to reach the God King realm. They were clearly two different people. There was not the slightest bit of similarity between them. How can you confuse the two of them?" Lan Er's head was still lowered. She did not want to look at Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's expressions. After a long silence, she said with a bitter voice, "I know that in order to save me, he went to the outside world to find a way to save me. Although he's a peerless God King, he just broke through not long ago. He can't defeat other god kings. The outside world is dangerous. If he encountered any danger or was attacked by other god kings, he would most likely meet with misfortune. Perhaps it was because he had encountered a great calamity that he had become a completely different person. He knows that I have an incurable terminal illness. He doesn't want to spend the rest of his life with me, but he feels guilty. That's why he returned here with another identity and released me from the Black Dungeon. In this way, he can give me my freedom and run away with the person he loves. After hearing this, Ji Tianqing did not know whether to laugh or cry. Even Yuniao was impressed by her imagination. Miss Lan your speculation sounds reasonable, but it doesn't hold water. Chao Qingyu was a god king expert. If he didn't improve in 10,000 years, he should have reached the second or third level of the god king realm, right? However, Tianqing is a 9th level divine lord. He's still far from the god king realm. Lan shook her head again and smiled bitterly. Perhaps he met with a great disaster and narrowly escaped death. His strength regressed. Or perhaps he met with a mishap a few thousand years ago and died. However, his spirit was not destroyed. He reincarnated and started cultivating from the beginning. He had a new life and a beautiful wife. However, after his strength increased and he regained his memories, he felt guilty towards me and came back to look for me. Ji Tianqing was stunned. Yuniao was also stunned. The couple looked at each other and frowned. There was a strange look in their eyes. Is this Lana really crazy? Or is she just pretending to be stupid? Why do I feel like she has fiery eyes of truth and is hinting at something else? Apart from the fact that she believed you to be Chao Qingyu, she was completely right about reincarnation. Both of her statements are based on evidence, so it's not easy to refute her. Ji Tianqing's frown deepened as he sent a voice transmission gloomily. She's being so unreasonable. Is she trying to blame me? Yuniao rolled her eyes at him and said angrily, "Don't be so smug. She's just delirious. Let's think of another way." Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement. Yuniao looked at Lan again. Seeing that she was completely calm and sober, she asked, "Miss Lan although I've told you so much, you still refuse to believe me. How can I prove that Tianqing is not Chao Qingyu?" Lan finally raised her head and looked at her and Ji Tianqing. There was a meaningful smile on her face. "It's very simple. Ask Chao Qingyu to come and see me. Reveal his true colors and tell me in person that he can't do anything. He's ashamed of me and the promise he made to me is invalid. Only in this way can my obsession be resolved and I won't hate him anymore. Even if I die, I'm willing to bless him to live a good life." These words were obviously from the bottom of Lan heart. After speaking her mind, she felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Her mind became clearer. Ji Tianqing and Yuniao frowned at the same time. They couldn't help but mutter, "Isn't this forcing her to do something? 10,000 years have passed. Chao Qingyu is most likely dead. If he's not dead, he should have come back to see you long ago." Lan was unmoved and didn't say anything else. It seemed like she was determined to see Chao Qingyu with her own eyes even if she had to die. Yuniao frowned and was still thinking of other ways. Ji Tianqing was already a little impatient. He said unhappily, "Miss Lan the Great Yan Empire's royal family and the 49 forces were the first to discover this palace. It took them 10 years to open the door of the Green Jade Palace. I chased after my enemy and snuck into the palace when they weren't paying attention. That's how I woke you up. When you were fighting with those godly lords, I found this stone house and found the jade slips and books left behind by Chao Qingyu. That's how we know the story of you and Chao Qingyu. I saved you because I didn't want to feel guilty. After all, I took the materials left behind by Chao Qingyu. Now that your injuries are stable, I'll leave his belongings to you. We're even now." After saying that, Ji Tianqing took out more than 100 jade slips, books, and golden papers from his interspatial ring and placed them in front of Lan. He only kept the 3 sets of godly monarch materials and returned the rest to Lan. Then he pulled Yuniao and turned to leave. It was a complete waste of time to reason with a crazy person like Lan. However, Lan ignored the jade slips, golden papers, and books. Her figure flashed and blocked the door of the secret chamber. She blocked Ji Tianqing and Yuniao's path and looked at them sadly. She said in a low voice, "Young Master Tianqing, do you think we're even now? Is that really so? It was your intrusion that woke me up from my 10,000 years of sleep and almost killed me. The only thing that kept me alive was my obsession. Will you really feel at ease if you just leave like this? Ji Tianqing frowned and asked, then what do you want to do? Without waiting for Lan Er to answer, Yunyao reminded him telepathically, actually, she's not crazy. She knows you're not Chao Qingyu, but she wants us to help her find him. As expected, Lan Er stared at Ji Tianqing and asked, you've seen Chao Qingyu, haven't you? Ji Tianqing was full of vigilance and asked, what nonsense are you talking about? I'm so young. How could I have seen him? Lan Er smiled meaningfully and said in a low voice, about 1,000 years ago, you saw Chao Qingyu. Seems that you even fought? Ji Tianqing's eyes suddenly lit up and flashed with a sharp cold light. He was also very vigilant and afraid. Lan Er saw that he was full of vigilance and quickly waved her hand. Don't ask me how I know. It's just a guess. Ji Tianqing, of course, didn't believe her. He thought to himself, damn it. How does she know this secret? Can she eavesdrop on my thoughts? Or can she spy on my divine soul and memory? If that's the case, it's too scary. Just as the two sides were in a stalemate and Ji Tianqing was hesitating, the gate of the divine palace, which was thousands of miles away, suddenly lit up with a bright divine light and emitted a vigorous fluctuation of divine power. Crack, crack, crack with a dull noise, the two gates of the divine palace opened. They didn't open from the inside but from the outside. Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, and Lan Er's divine senses all detected this scene. The three of them changed their expressions immediately. Chapter 3240. Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, and Lan Er didn't expect that. The gate of the divine palace, which was originally closed, would open from the outside. At that moment, the three of them put aside their previous questions and focused their attention on the gate of the divine palace. The same question popped up in the minds of the three of them. Who opened the gate of the divine palace? Is it Yin Tiangang and the divine emperors of the large sects and families? Or is it someone else? But no matter who it was, if they appeared at this time, they would be enemies and not friends. The three of them were very vigilant. They quickly restrained their auras and stayed in the stone house without moving, staring at the gate of the divine palace. The next moment, a dazzling blood-red light flew in from outside the gate. Swoosh! The ball of rising blood-red flames wrapped around a tall and sturdy figure and passed through the gate of the divine palace. Then he fell to the ground with a plop, shaking the ground and stirring up a lot of dust. The tall figure struggled on the ground a few times, but he couldn't get up. But he used his last bit of strength to raise his hand and shoot out a beam of divine light, closing the gate of the divine palace. Bang! The gate of the divine palace closed and the defense divine array resumed its operation. The gate returned to silence. After 20 seconds, the figure still fell to the ground. He didn't move or make any sound. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao looked at each other in confusion. However, Yunyao pulled Ji Tianqing's arm and signaled him to look at Lan Er with her eyes. Ji Tianqing turned his head and saw Lan Er trembling all over. Her claws and lips were trembling. Tears actually gushed out of her blood-red eyes, and her emotions became extremely agitated. Seeing her reaction, Ji Tianqing was stunned. Then he guessed a possibility and couldn't help but exclaim, "It can't be that coincidental, right?" As his voice fell, Lan Er, who was almost crazy, rushed out of the stone house and flew towards the gate of the divine palace. Her injuries had just stabilized and she hadn't fully recovered yet. She was still very weak. Even if she flew across the sky, she was still shaking and not fast enough. However, she completely disregarded her own situation and desperately ran away in tears. Watching her figure disappear into the horizon, Yunyao revealed a gratified smile and muttered to herself, "Hao Yin does not disappoint the bitter lover. How could a woman as infatuated as her be let down? If it's really the person she's waiting for, then this ending can be considered perfect." Yunyao was grateful for Lan Er's dedication and devotion. She felt gratified and happy for her. However, Ji Tianqing's expression was a little unnatural. A happy ending? It was for her. But that might not be the case for us. Yao, if that guy is really a Chao Qingyu, we're in big trouble. Yunyao turned her head to look at him. She blinked her eyes and laughed softly. That's right. You almost caused his wife to lose her life and even took away his divine king-level material. How could he let you go? Ji Tianqing nodded and added, furthermore, I met him 1,000 years ago and fought with him. I even gave him some pointers. Yunyao nodded slightly and her smile became even wider. She teased, 1,000 years ago, you were high and mighty. You could give Chao Qingyu some pointers with just a few words. Now he's still a divine king, but you've become a divine sovereign. If he recognizes you, how awkward would that be? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and laughed softly. It's fine. That guy fainted as soon as he flew into the divine palace. He must have suffered some serious injuries. There's nothing to be afraid of. Yunyao added, if the situation doesn't go well, we'll sneak away when Lan isn't paying attention. The husband and wife echoed each other and made a happy decision just like that. Then, the two of them flew out of the stone house and towards the divine palace's gate. 100 breaths later, the husband and wife flew thousands of miles away and landed in front of the divine palace's gate. At this moment Lan was lying on top of the dark red figure, crying her heart out. Seeing Lan crying her heart out and the tall figure covered in blood, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao's hearts skipped a beat. What's going on? That guy isn't dead, is he? Is he going to die in front of his own house with his last breath? Ji Tianqing mumbled inwardly. He hastily used his divine perception to check the situation. He heaved a sigh of relief when he discovered that the divine race male was not dead and had only fainted from his injuries. That guy isn't dead. It's just that Lan is too emotional. After saying that, the husband and wife stood at the side and sized up the divine race male who was lying on the ground. This was a 4-meter-tall Great Yin divine race male. He had the typical characteristics and aura of his race. He was tall and sturdy. His skin was dark red, and there were 2 pairs of dark red wings on his back. However, one of the wings had been severed at the roots. The wound was hideous and terrifying, and blood was still gushing out of it. Moreover, this person's body was covered in wounds. There were more than 100 of them, and many of them were fatal. The purple battle armor he wore had long been tattered and riddled with holes. It was also dyed red with blood. Even his head of purple hair was soaked in blood and twisted into knots. Fortunately, he was a godly king expert. His divine body was not destroyed even though he had suffered such terrible injuries. If he was an ordinary person, his divine body would have been reduced to ashes. Based on Lan reaction, he could tell that this Great Yin divine race male was Chao Qingyu. Ji Tianqing released his divine perception again to check on Chao Qingyu's divine soul injury. However, as soon as his divine perception entered Chao Qingyu's mind, it was shattered by an extremely violent and powerful lightning divine power. Ji Tianqing felt a buzz in his mind. His divine perception was a little dizzy, and his vision was blurry. He shook his head and gradually regained consciousness. He blamed himself inwardly. Phew, I was too careless. Chao Qingyu should be a 3rd-level godly king. To be able to injure him to this extent, it must be at least a 4th-level intermediate godly king. Since he's unconscious, his godhead must be severely damaged or even sealed by his opponent's divine power. I should have thought of this earlier. How could I use my divine perception so easily? This was the first time Ji Tianqing came into contact with a godly king expert since he returned to the divine realm. He was used to it and thought that no one could threaten him. However, it was different now. The godly king's power he came into contact with was enough to threaten him. After blaming himself, he thought of more problems and became more vigilant. Yunyao saw his serious expression and asked, Tianqing, how are godly King Qingyu's injuries? Upon hearing this, Lan held back her tears and looked at Ji Tianqing inquisitively. Ji Tianqing answered without hesitation. His injuries are very serious, especially the injuries to his godhead. They're even more serious than the injuries to his divine body. It's already incredible that he could hold on until now. There are cracks on his godhead. Unfortunately, it's enveloped by a powerful divine power, so I can't check his condition. Yunyao frowned. She knew that this was a tricky matter. This news was like a bolt from the blue to Lan. She was stunned. Chapter 32-41. For Lan Er, this period of time was really full of ups and downs. First, Ji Tianqing and the 50 factions barged into the divine palace and woke her up from her 10,000 years of slumber. After that, she almost lost her life in the battle, but Ji Tianqing saved her. Under the care of Ji Tianqing and his wife, she recuperated for more than 20 days, and her injuries finally stabilized. However, at this moment, the door of the divine palace opened, and Chao Qingyu actually returned. Lan Er could not believe it. She only felt that she was dreaming. She was so excited that her heart almost jumped out of her chest. Even if she was dreaming, she could not believe that after 10,000 years, Chao Qingyu did not abandon her and really returned as promised. However, the heavens were playing a joke on her. Chao Qingyu, who had just rushed into the divine palace, fell to the ground and fainted. Moreover, his injuries were extremely serious, and he could die at any time. Most importantly, neither she nor Ji Tianqing could save Chao Qingyu. At this moment Lan Er fell from heaven to hell. She only felt extremely absurd and desperate. Hao Ian, why did you do this to me? I was sealed in the darkness for 10,000 years. I endured so much pain and despair before he returned. But why did he end up like this? How can I save him? Lan Er knelt on the ground and lay on Chao Qingyu's back. She cried heart-wrenchingly and tears flowed like a fountain. Seeing this scene, Yunyao also felt sympathy for Lan Er. She could not help but turn to Ji Tianqing and ask through voice transmission, Tianqing, although you have not broken through to the Divine King realm, you should have a way to save Chao Qingyu, right? Seeing Ji Tianqing frown slightly, as if he was considering and weighing the pros and cons, Yunyao advised again, Lan Er's experience is indeed pitiful. You have an old friendship with Chao Qingyu, of course. This is only my suggestion. The final decision is still up to you. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, You're right. I do have a way to treat his injuries. I trust your intuition. Since you think I can help them, I'll help them again. After he finished speaking, he looked at the heartbroken Lan Er and said, Miss Lan Er, you don't have to be so sad. Chao Qingyu's life is not in danger for now. Also, I will try my best to treat him. Hearing these two sentences, Lan Er's cries immediately stopped, and her despairing eyes regained their luster. She looked up at Ji Tianqing and asked in disbelief, You can treat his injuries? Didn't you say earlier that he was injured by a Divine King powerhouse, and even you can't investigate? Ji Tianqing waved his hand and explained, It's unrealistic to directly investigate and treat his injuries. I have to think of a way. Turn him over first and I'll take a closer look at his injuries. Lan Er's mind calmed down a lot. Ji Tianqing was willing to help. At the very least she saw some hope. She hurriedly stretched out her muscular arms and flipped Chao Qingyu, who was lying on the ground, over. Chao Qingyu was lying on the ground with his face facing the sky. His blood-stained purple hair was parted, revealing his true appearance. A chiseled, resolute, and dignified square face appeared before everyone's eyes. He had dark red skin, a high nose bridge, and thick purple eyebrows. These were the typical characteristics of Great Yan's divine tribe. However, Chao Qingyu was unconscious. His eyes were tightly shut, and he could not feel anything. Lan Er looked at Chao Qingyu's face in a daze. Her heart was filled with worry and anxiety. She slowly stretched out her hand, wanting to touch Chao Qingyu's face. However, she retracted her hand halfway. At this moment, Yunyao suddenly frowned. She pointed at Chao Qingyu's right hand and asked, Look, what's that in his hand? Ji Tianqing and Lan Er looked down and saw Chao Qingyu's right hand clutching his chest. His palm was tightly gripping a jade bottle. Even though he was unconscious, his hand was stiff as he gripped the red jade bottle tightly. It was clear that the jade bottle was very important to him. Lan Er held Chao Qingyu's hand and pried his fingers open one by one before she removed the jade bottle. She looked at it from head to toe. A puzzled expression appeared on her face as she said, This jade bottle is exquisitely made. It seems like there's a pill inside. Let me take a look, Ji Tianqing said as he reached out to take the jade bottle. Fortunately, the jade bottle was not sealed with a formation. He opened it easily and poured out a golden pill the size of a broad bean. Swoosh! The divine pill floated in front of everyone. It shone with a dazzling golden light and fluctuated with a vast divine power. The three of them did not need to guess to know that this was definitely a king-grade divine pill. Its effects were extraordinary. Moreover, Chao Qingyu valued this item so much. It was clear that this divine pill might not be a low-grade king-grade divine pill. It was very likely to be a mid-grade king-grade divine pill. If that was the case, then this divine pill was not only a treasure in the Tianbei region. Even in the entire boundless heaven continent, it was an extraordinary treasure that would tempt countless divine kings. Ji Tianqing used the divine eye mystic technique and stared at the dazzling golden divine pill. He observed it in detail. Lan'er and Yunyao were also full of curiosity as they sized up the divine pill. Suddenly, Lan'er had a look of realization. She said excitedly, "I understand now. This precious king-grade divine pill can definitely heal Qingyu's injuries. If not, he would not have protected this divine pill at the risk of being seriously injured and unconscious." Lan'er firmly believed this answer. She hurriedly urged Ji Tianqing and said, "Quickly give this divine pill to Qingyu. His injuries will recover soon." Seeing that Ji Tianqing was unmoved, she could not hold back the anxiety in her heart. She reached out her claws to take the divine pill. However, Ji Tianqing stopped her and shook his head. "You're wrong. This divine pill is not to heal his injuries." Lan'er retracted her claws and asked Ji Tianqing in confusion, "It can't heal his injuries? How is that possible? Then why is he protecting the jade bottle so tightly?" Ji Tianqing reached out and held the dazzling golden divine pill. He put it back into the jade bottle. He took a deep look at Lan'er and handed the jade bottle to her. He said in a serious tone, "According to my judgment, this king-grade divine pill is to heal you." "What?" Lan'er was stunned. Her eyes widened and she was petrified like a statue. This sentence had a huge impact on her. She could not believe it. She even suspected that she had heard wrongly. Chao Qingyu had disappeared for 10,000 years. Now, he had returned with scars all over his body and his life hanging by a thread. Even though he was unconscious, he still held the jade bottle that contained the divine pill tightly and pressed it against his chest, the place closest to his heart. Because the divine pill in the jade bottle was to heal the person he loved. It was not just a divine pill. It was a vow to his lover. At this moment, Lan'er was trembling all over. Her emotions were on the verge of collapse. However, it was not anger or despair. It was surprise, shock, disbelief, and guilt. Tears gushed out of her eyes. She smiled self-deprecatingly and shouted to herself, "So, he never forgot me and never abandoned me. I've wronged him." Chapter 3242. Lan'er finally understood Chao Qingyu's painstaking efforts. For the past 10,000 years, the pain and torment she suffered, as well as the resentment and unwillingness in her heart, instantly collapsed and disintegrated. She even felt guilty and blamed herself for once resenting Chao Qingyu. Chao Qingyu was so loyal to her. But she doubted and resented Chao Qingyu. How could she not feel guilty? After crying and laughing for a while, Lan'er's emotions finally calmed down. She took the jade bottle and held it in her palm like a treasure. She could not help but murmur, "Qingyu, Qingyu, why are you so silly? If you have this kind of heart and affection, even if I die, I will have no regrets. If I could choose, I would rather this divine pill be used to treat your injuries." Lan'er's words came from the bottom of her heart and made people sigh with emotion. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and consoled, "Miss Lan'er, Chao Qingyu paid such a terrible price and brought back the divine pill to treat you. What you should do now is to consume this divine pill and treat your injuries as soon as possible and recover to your original appearance. As for Chao Qingyu, leave it to me temporarily. I will think of a way to treat him. I hope that when he wakes up, he can see you recovering to your original appearance. That would be the best way to thank him." Lan'er felt that it made sense and nodded solemnly, "You're right. He sacrificed so much for me. How can I disappoint him? I'll consume the divine pill now to treat my injuries. Qingyu's injuries. I'll leave it to you." After speaking, Lan'er bowed deeply to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing did not delay any longer and said, "Let's go. Let's all go to the stone house." After that, Lan'er carried the unconscious Chao Qingyu and everyone flew back to the stone house. After entering the stone house, Lan'er entered the secret chamber and started to circulate her energy to regulate her breathing. After she was ready, she consumed the dazzling gold divine pill and circulated her energy to refine the medicinal strength. At this time, Ji Tianqing placed Chao Qingyu in the alchemy room and began to circulate his energy to save her. Although he had not reached the divine king realm, he could not treat Chao Qingyu directly. However, he placed Chao Qingyu in the middle of the array, where the cauldron was. Then he activated the divine formation that Chao Qingyu had set up years ago, and used the power of the king-grade divine formation to heal Chao Qingyu's injuries. Of course, Chao Qingyu's king-grade divine formation was of a lower grade and had no healing properties. Ji Tianqing made some adjustments to the divine formation and used the power of the 3 king-grade materials to achieve this amazing effect. He focused on casting his divine powers and channeled his divine powers into Chao Qingyu's divine body with the help of the divine formation. Under his meticulous treatment, the external injuries on Chao Qingyu's divine body were slowly healing. 1 day, 3 days, 5 days. 6 days passed quickly. Chao Qingyu's injuries were mostly healed, and he no longer looked as wretched and ferocious as before. However, his internal injuries and the damage to his godhead were still there. The powerful divine powers that enveloped his godhead were still there. Thus, Ji Tianqing used the power of the 3 king-grade materials to channel the divine powers in Chao Qingyu's mind. This time he finally saw it clearly. The divine king's divine powers was a dazzling divine light of 5 different colors. There were countless strands of divine lightning flashing within it, as well as the raging divine flames of the burning heavens. There was also the cold and sharp light of the stars, as well as a terrifying multicolored poison. Divine powers of various attributes mixed together and filled Chao Qingyu's mind, enveloping his godhead. Because of this, Chao Qingyu was still unconscious and could not wake up. Moreover, his divine powers were constantly weakening. The injuries to his godhead and divine soul could not heal on their own. After understanding the situation, Ji Tianqing could not help but frown. Who is the divine king that injured Chao Qingyu? His methods and strength are indeed extraordinary. Fortunately, Chao Qingyu's divine will is extremely tenacious. That is why he can hold on until now. If it were someone else, their godhead would have been further damaged and they would not be far from death. Yunyao, who was beside him, asked worriedly, Tianqing, is there a way to heal him? At the very least, it would be good to wake him up. Ji Tianqing nodded and explained, a divine king's divine soul and will are extremely powerful. As long as the divine light in his mind is removed, he should be able to wake up very quickly. If I recover to the divine king realm, I will be able to disperse the divine light directly. But now, I can only rely on the power of a divine treasure. Yunyao thought for a moment and immediately understood what he meant. She asked, you mean the heaven-mending pearl? That's right. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. Then, he activated the heaven-mending pearl's power and used the devouring divine ability. He unleashed a sacred white light vortex that enveloped Chao Qingyu's head. This move was indeed effective. The divine power in Chao Qingyu's mind was left behind by a mid-level divine king. Its power was incomparably strong and could be said to be destructive. If Ji Tianqing activated the devouring divine power, his divine body would definitely explode. But when he activated the heaven-mending pearl, it became easy. The heaven-mending pearl's divine power locked onto that 5-colored divine light and devoured it bit by bit. After a short 6 hours, the divine power in Chao Qingyu's mind was completely devoured by the heaven-mending pearl. Chao Qingyu's mind regained clarity. His godhead was also no longer suppressed and started to slowly heal itself. And Ji Tianqing temporarily sealed that terrifying 5-colored divine power in the heaven-mending pearl to be refined in the future. After being purified by the heaven-mending pearl, that mid-level divine king's divine power will become pure energy. When I need it, I can refine it for my own use to increase the power of the divine lightning, divine fire, and poison laws. It's good to have the heaven-mending pearl. It can help Chao Qingyu heal, and also help me absorb divine power. These thoughts flashed through his mind. Ji Tianqing was rather gratified and used the art to treat Chao Qingyu's internal injuries. Soon another 7 days passed. Ji Tianqing continuously used the art for 7 days and supplemented it with a large number of supreme-grade monarch-grade divine pills. Finally, Chao Qingyu's internal injuries stabilized. Next, only the Godhead and Divine Soul injuries were left. Ji Tianqing had a way to treat this. However, the effort and the reward could not be proportional. It was extremely cumbersome and complicated. After thinking about it, he decided to let Chao Qingyu heal itself in a deep sleep. When he stopped, Yunyao looked at him with concern and asked, "You must be tired after continuously using the art for so many days, right? Quickly take a rest." Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said with a serious expression, "Chao Qingyu's internal and external injuries have stabilized. He won't be in danger. I can treat the Godhead's injuries, but it's very troublesome and will take too long. It's better to let him heal himself. I thought of something and can't help but worry." "What is it?" Yunyao asked doubtfully. Ji Tianqing revealed a worried expression and said in a low voice, "Judging from Chao Qingyu's injuries, the person who injured him must be a mid-level divine king. An expert of this level must be second to none in the northern heaven region. No one can control him. Moreover, when Chao Qingyu returned to the divine palace, it seemed like he was being pursued. That's why he ran for his life and had no time to treat his injuries." Hearing this, Yunyao instantly understood what he meant and revealed a worried expression. Chapter 32-43. Tianqing, you mean? There's a mid-level god king chasing after Chao Qingyu, so he's busy running for his life and has no time to treat his injuries? Yunyao furrowed her brows, her face full of worry. In that case, the mid-level god king chasing after Chao Qingyu might be arriving soon? He might even have arrived at the Cloud Sea Mystic Realm and is about to attack the Green Jade Palace? Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said earnestly, "Although this is just my speculation, we have to be on guard." Yunyao nodded in agreement and asked, "Chao Qingyu is injured like this, he definitely won't wake up in a short time. A mid-level god king might appear at any time. We definitely can't stop him. Tianqing, what do you plan to do?" Ji Tianqing's combat power was extremely strong, comparable to a second-level god king. But against a mid-level god king, he still had no chance of winning. He might even lose his life. Under such circumstances, even if he chose to escape from the Green Jade Palace, it was also reasonable. Yunyao would not object. After all, they had already helped Lan Er and Chao Qingyu to this extent. They had already done everything they could. However, Ji Tianqing did not think of escaping. He said in a serious tone, "With my current strength and Chao Qingyu's current condition, of course, we can't be discovered by that mid-level god king. The divine formation that Chao Qingyu set up back then was a little simple. I plan to modify the palace's defensive formation. This will make the palace more hidden and not easy to discover. Its defensive power will also be stronger. In this way, even if a mid-level god king really comes after us, we can resist for a while." Yunyao thought for a while and nodded in agreement. "This is a good idea. It's also the most feasible method at present." After pausing for a while, she asked again, "Tianqing, the reason why you stayed and were willing to help Lan Er and Chao Qingyu, was it because you wanted to wait for Chao Qingyu to wake up?" Of course, Ji Tianqing wouldn't hide it and nodded at her. Yunyao confirmed her guess and continued, "Chao Qingyu is a real deity king. He has been wandering outside for tens of thousands of years. He must have been to many places in the God realm. You've always wanted to investigate the structure of the God realm, as well as the situation outside the boundless heaven continent. When Chao Qingyu wakes up, we can ask him, right?" Ji Tianqing revealed a gratified smile and nodded. "You know me the best." Yunyao also smiled faintly and said, "Since that's the case, let's not waste any more time. Let's start modifying the defensive array as soon as possible." In other words, she obviously wanted to help Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and said, "Other than you, I still have to wake everyone up and help me modify the divine formation. Only then can I finish it in the shortest time possible." Yunyao naturally agreed. Following that, Ji Tianqing took out the divine battleship and woke up Lin Shui, Godlord Blood Illusion, left emissary Jean, Blood Dragon Right Emissary, and Ye Feiyun, who were cultivating in seclusion. After everyone left the divine battleship one after another and appeared in the stone house, Ji Tianqing woke everyone in the Nine Heavens 10 Absolutes Pagoda. Ji Ku, White Dragon, Ji Wushuang, and Zhen Hong, who had just broken through to the 4th level Divine Lord Realm, not long ago also appeared in the stone house one after another. What was worth mentioning was that Zhen Hong had been in seclusion in the divine pagoda for so long. His strength had increased greatly again, and was not far from the 6th-level Divine Lord realm. With so many Divine Lords gathered in the stone house, it immediately became a little crowded. Everyone's gazes gathered on Ji Tianqing. They all opened their mouths and asked, "Sir Tianqing, what instructions do you have for waking us up? Sir, is there anything we can help with?" Ji Tianqing gave a simple explanation of the current situation to everyone. Currently, we're in the Azure Jade Divine Palace. Lan consumed the divine elixir, and is in seclusion to recuperate. Chao Qingyu's injuries are too severe and he's still in a deep sleep. The Divine King powerhouses pursuing Chao Qingyu might appear at any time. We have to modify the Divine Palace's defensive array at the fastest speed. After hearing that, everyone understood the importance and urgency of the matter. They all revealed solemn expressions. Ji Tianqing did not delay any longer either. He led everyone and flew toward the Divine Palace's main door. Swoosh! Everyone flew across the sky at lightning speed. Before long, they arrived at the Divine Palace's main door. Even though the 1,000-feet-tall lofty door was tightly shut, the divine array on the door was still operating. But everyone was well aware that this door was still not secure enough. Ji Tianqing cast the Divine Eye Mystic Art, and stared at the Divine Palace's main door without blinking. He carefully observed the defensive divine array on the door, and pondered on how to improve it. Before he entered the Divine Palace, he had already observed this divine array. He was very familiar with the structure of the array. Now, after frowning and pondering for an hour, he decided on a modification plan. The array on the Divine Palace's main door is only a low-grade king-level divine array. Its structure and level are relatively simple. If a mid-level divine king came, he would probably be able to break through it within 50 moves. I want to superimpose 5 different low-grade king-level divine arrays on top of this divine array. When the 6 divine arrays are combined into one, its complexity and defensive power will almost reach the mid-grade king level. Ji Tianqing looked at Yunyao, Jiku, and everyone else. He said in a serious tone, "Although we are all Sir Gods, none of us can set up a king-level divine array. But if all of you help us, we can set up a king-level divine array together." After hearing what he said, everyone was energized. They shouted excitedly, "Young Master Tianqing, please instruct us. We will listen to your instructions on how to set up the array." Although they did not know how to set up a king-level divine array, they could listen to Ji Tianqing's instructions and work together to set up the array. Hence, Ji Tianqing led everyone into the sky and started to cast the array. He stood at the highest point and was in the center. Everyone obeyed his orders and spread out in all directions, standing in different positions. Ji Tianqing formed a divine seal with both hands. As he waved thousands of divine lights towards the towering door, he shouted loudly, "Yao Yao, gentle wind 7 kills position 36 spiral seals. Cuckoo, Jin thunder heavenly fire position 39,000 butterfly seals. Lin Shui, heaven life north position 42 spectral seals." As he called out their names one by one, he stated their positions and the requirements for casting the divine seals. Everyone started to move. Everyone's expression was serious. They were fully focused and did their best to cast the array. They did not dare to make any mistakes, because everyone knew that if anyone made a mistake, it would affect the others. It might even affect the entire array and cause it to collapse. At this moment, everyone was working together sincerely. With Ji Tianqing as the center, they were tightly united. An invisible sense of pride and trust filled everyone's hearts. Of course, as the person in charge of the array, Ji Tianqing was in control of the overall situation. Not only did he need to be extremely intelligent and knowledgeable, but he also needed to expend a huge amount of divine power. As time passed, millions of divine power rays were injected into the door of the Divine Palace. The defensive divine array of the Divine Palace gradually changed. Its power was also slowly increasing. Chapter 3244. Originally, with Ji Tianqing's ability, it would take him at least 7 days to set up a lower king grade divine array. However, with everyone working together, It only took them 20 hours to complete the task. Although everyone had been concentrating and casting the array with all their might, they were a little tired. However, when the first divine dragon slaying formation was completed, everyone was excited. They revealed an incomparably proud and excited expression. Even left emissary Jean, right emissary blood dragon, Nyefeyun and the rest could not help but exclaim, "Oh my God! This is unbelievable! We are all Sir Gods and we can set up a king-grade divine array? This is just like a dream. Who would believe it? This is a miracle. Mr. Tianqing is too demonic." He had actually mastered such a complicated and profound king-grade divine formation to its fullest extent. Even if he split the array into more than 10 parts, he could still piece it together neatly. This is simply too terrifying. Even a real supreme being might not be able to do it. It was no wonder that everyone was so excited and found it unbelievable. This was because everyone knew that a second or third degree supreme being could set up a lower king-grade divine array quickly, and it was nothing strange. However, with more than 10 Sir Gods working together, it was a shocking miracle to be able to set up a lower king-grade divine array in a day. After all, godly lords and godly kings had different levels of strength and control over arrays. Moreover, the Sir Gods did not know how to set up a king-grade divine array. However, Ji Tianqing had split the array into more than 10 parts and commanded everyone to cast the array at the same time. In the end, he was able to piece together more than 10 simple divine arrays and restore them to the original king-grade divine array. This was a heaven-defying method. Everyone couldn't help but guess exactly how terrifying Ji Tianqing's attainments in the Tao of formations were. Was he really a Sir God? From his various demonic performances, he was obviously an unparalleled supreme being. Seeing that everyone was excited, they were exclaiming and discussing excitedly. Ji Tianqing asked everyone to take elixirs and recuperate for 2 hours to recover their energy and strength. Anyway, everyone had an astonishing amount of wealth. There were all kinds of elixirs and cultivation resources that could not be used up. Everyone quickly calmed down and sat cross-legged in the sky. They each took out elixirs and divine stones and began to regulate their breathing. Very quickly 2 hours passed. Ji Tianqing then ordered everyone to scatter around him, each occupying a specific position. After everyone was in formation, he led everyone to start setting up the second divine formation. The second king-grade low-grade divine array was called Star Destroyer. It was also a complicated, profound, and extraordinary divine formation. However, Ji Tianqing used his superb talent in array formation to divide it into a dozen parts and directed everyone to set up the array formation. With their previous experience, everyone felt much more relaxed and smoother when they set up the array. Moreover, when they were circulating and adjusting their breathing just now, everyone sensed that their strength had improved again, and they also had a new understanding of the divine Tao cultivation. Everyone understood that it was because they had participated in the setting up of the king-grade divine formation. This unprecedented and novel challenge broadened their horizons and allowed their strength to rise to the next level. Therefore, Lin Shui, Zhanhong, Nyefeyun, and the others were grateful to Ji Tianqing. Before they knew it, a day had passed. The second Star Destroyer divine formation was also completed and superimposed on the door of the divine palace. Everyone had used up more divine power, and their spirits were also more tired. This time Ji Tianqing asked everyone to circulate and adjust their breathing for 4 hours. After 4 hours, when everyone had recovered their strength, they began to set up the array again in high spirits. The third divine formation was called Sky Splitter, and its difficulty had obviously increased. Fortunately, everyone had the experience of setting up the previous 2 arrays. Their control of divine power and positioning had also reached a more subtle level, and their coordination with Ji Tianqing was better. Therefore, they did not disappoint Ji Tianqing and completed the array within 24 hours. After taking elixirs and adjusting their breathing for 6 hours, everyone began to set up the fourth divine formation. The result was still the same, and it was completed within a day. The fifth divine formation was the last step and also the most important one. Whether the 5 divine formations set up by everyone and the original divine formation on the door of the divine palace could be integrated seamlessly and form a new and powerful divine formation depended on this. Not only did Ji Tianqing attach great importance to this, but everyone also gave it their all, not daring to be the slightest bit careless. Time passed quietly. Everyone was immersed in setting up the divine formation and forgot about themselves. This was the most difficult one, and it took the longest time. After 2 full days, the 5th divine formation was completed. At that moment, a mysterious change occurred on the door of the divine palace. 6 layers of light shields appeared on the surface of the door. Each layer was as thick as a palm, flashing with dazzling divine light and emitting terrifying divine power fluctuations. Under everyone's gaze, billions of veins appeared on each layer of light shield. They were like densely packed nerves and blood vessels gently wriggling. At this moment, the veins and structure of the 6 king-grade divine formations were clearly displayed. Then, under everyone's expectant gaze, the 6 layers of light shields began to ripple, rotate, and twist, gradually merging. Swoosh! Swoosh! Divine light flashed, and all kinds of strange lights and shadows appeared one after another. The 6 layers of light shields kept gathering, twisting and folding, and gradually merging together. As time passed, the number of light shields kept decreasing from 6 layers to 5, 4, 3. Of course, as the number of light shields decreased, their thickness kept increasing, and their power also skyrocketed. When everyone saw this amazing scene, they all revealed shocked, excited, and expectant expressions. Young Master Tianqing's methods are really amazing. Such shocking array formation attainments, comparable to an unparalleled Supreme God King. Unparalleled in the world. Not to mention the great Yan Empire, even in the entire Tianbei region, no one can compare to him. When the 6 divine formations merge, it will definitely evolve into an even more powerful divine formation. Even a middle-level Supreme God King can be blocked outside. Everyone discussed excitedly, and their admiration for Ji Tianqing grew. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. The 6 layers of defensive light shields had all merged, becoming a super divine formation half a meter thick. This extremely sturdy and thick divine formation flickered with colorful divine light, and there were thousands of divine dragons and lightning shadows on its surface. Even though the divine formation's power was restrained, it still made everyone wary and fearful. One could imagine how terrifying this divine formation's power was when it was fully unleashed. Ji Tianqing also heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. He smiled and said, "Finally, I did not disappoint everyone and successfully evolved this reincarnation-killing formation. Thank you for your full support." No one dared to claim credit, and they hurriedly waved their hands to express that it was not hard. Because everyone understood that the most mentally exhausted person was him. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and shot out a few beams of divine light, causing the colorful light shield to disappear and be restrained within the palace gate. Then, he explained to everyone, although this reincarnation-killing formation is only a middle-grade king-grade divine formation, it is complex and mysterious. Ordinary middle-level Supreme God Kings may not be able to crack it. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 32-45. Ji Tianqing explained the effects and power of the samsara killing formation to everyone, so that he could reassure them. Otherwise, why would they follow him and stay in the Green Jade Palace? If they were not confident, once a middle divine king barged in, Ji Tianqing and everyone else's lives would be in danger. Since Ji Tianqing was confident in the samsara killing formation, everyone did not worry too much. Seeing that everyone was tired and weak, Ji Tianqing said, "Everyone must be exhausted after helping me set up the formation. Go back and rest." Lin Shuas or God Blood Illusion, Nie Fei Yun and the rest did not think too much. Everyone nodded to show that they understood and entered the divine ship to rest. After Bai Long and Ji Wushuang entered the divine pagoda and returned to the distorted spacetime to rest, only Yun Yao and Jiku were left beside Ji Tianqing. The 2 ladies were not in a hurry to return to the divine pagoda to rest. They looked at Ji Tianqing and asked the question in their hearts. "Brother Tianqing, we only modified the formation at the entrance of the palace. Are you sure it'll work?" "Tianqing, even if the formation at the entrance of the palace is strengthened, the defensive formation that envelopes the palace is still a little weak." Ji Tianqing looked at the 2 of them and smiled. "You know me well. You are also very attentive and considerate." "That's right. It's not enough to strengthen the entrance of the palace. I still have to strengthen the defensive formation. However, The defensive formation that envelopes the palace has a radius of 200 miles. It's not easy to strengthen and modify this divine formation. Yunyao added, moreover, everyone has been setting up the formation for so many days. They can't take it anymore. Therefore, you want everyone to go back and rest. Do you plan to strengthen the defensive formation alone? Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he admitted it. Jike said worriedly, Brother Tianqing, you are so considerate of everyone. But what about you? You first helped Chao Qingyu to treat her injuries. After that, you did not rest and focused on setting up the samsara-killing formation. You must be tired after so many days. Let us help you. Yunyao hurriedly nodded and said with concern, it's too tiring for you to reinforce the defensive formation alone, and it won't be efficient. It'll be faster if we work together. The two of them were so considerate of him, and even strongly requested to help him. How could he refuse? Therefore, Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement and said with relief, the people who understand me the most and understand me the most are the two of you. All right, let's move together then. After that, Ji Tianqing led Yunyao and Jiku to observe the defensive array of the divine palace. The defensive light shield that enveloped the entire divine palace was like a huge ball of light, suspended in the vast sea of clouds. The defensive power of this light barrier was extraordinary, and its structure was also rather complicated. There were as many as 140 million meridians. Even with Ji Tianqing's God's Eye secret technique, it took him half a day to figure out the structure of the array. He racked his brains and his brain spun rapidly. He thought about what kind of divine array and method he could use to reinforce and strengthen the defensive array. Within 2 hours he tried more than 10 divine arrays and methods, and made hundreds of deductions and predictions. Finally, he succeeded in finding a way. Use the reverse cutting and merging method. Merge the black tortoise divine sealing formation into this defensive array from 12 different directions. The success rate of this method should be above 90%. Once it succeeds, the defensive array's power will increase by more than 3 times. Although there's still a gap between it and a king-grade divine array, it's better now. Even if there's a godly king expert who can decipher it, it'll still take more time and methods. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself. After making up his mind, he told Yunyao and Jiku his thoughts, train of thought, and the method of setting up the array. Yunyao and Jiku were both proud daughters who had received the godly king's inheritance. They were extremely talented and intelligent. Ji Tianqing only explained it once and they understood. After confirming that there were no problems, the three of them flew into the sky. They each took a position and started to cast the array together. Of course, Ji Tianqing was still the leader in the process of casting the array. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The three of them looked solemn. They formed hand seals and kept releasing beams of divine power. Thousands of beams of divine power shot into the southeast corner of the 5-colored canopy like sharp arrows. The three of them cast the array continuously for an hour and opened up a 1,000-foot-long gap in the southeast corner of the canopy. This was the first step of setting up the array. They had to cut open the defensive array of the divine palace. Then, Ji Tianqing and the other two released divine light into the gap, and formed a small black tortoise divine sealing formation. This was the second step, the so-called merging of the points. After an entire day, the small black tortoise divine sealing formation was completed and gradually merged into the canopy. The gap also closed. Such a scene made Ji Tianqing's spirits rise. He said with a heart full of gratification, as I expected, this method is feasible. However, he did not let his guard down. This was because he had to cut open 12 gaps in the 5-colored canopy from different directions, and merge the 12 small black tortoise divine sealing formations into it. This way, the 12 small black tortoise divine sealing formations would form the complete black tortoise divine sealing formation. At that time, the black tortoise divine sealing formation would completely merge with the 5-colored canopy, and the defensive array of the divine palace would be strengthened. Only then would it be considered a success. On the first day, Ji Tianqing and the other two completed 1/12 of the array. On the second day, they repeated the same trick and opened another gap in another direction to merge the small divine sealing formation. The third day, the fourth day, the fifth day. As time passed, day after day passed. On the morning of the 11th day, Ji Tianqing and the other two merged the 10 small divine sealing formations into the canopy. In 2 more days the mission would be completed. Although the 3 of them were very tired, they stubbornly persevered when they thought that success was right in front of them. After the transformation of the array was completed, they could rest and recuperate. However, things did not go as they wished. On this morning, when the sun rose from the east, a group of uninvited guests arrived at the gates of the Green Jade Palace. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A dazzling 5-colored divine light enveloped more than 20 figures and landed in the sea of clouds outside the gates. After the dazzling divine light faded, 23 God race experts appeared. If Ji Tianqing saw these people, he would definitely be shocked. Because these people were Yan Tiangang and the divine lords of the other major sects. However, all of them were severely injured. They looked miserable and wretched, and their expressions were filled with grief and indignation. They maintained a respectful posture as they looked at the 30-meter-tall God race expert in bronze armor, and wielding a halberd in the middle of the crowd. Honorable Divine King, we have arrived. This is the Green Jade Palace. Without a doubt, that thick-bodied alien god race with rock-like skin was a God King expert. As for Yan Tiangang and the divine lords of the various sects, they had been captured by him and had no choice but to obey his orders. The alien race Divine King stepped out of the crowd and sized up the Green Jade Palace with a cold gaze. A cruel and sinister smile curled on his lips. Damn thief, I crossed the sea to kill you. Now that I've found your lair, let's see where you can escape to. Wonderful book house. Chapter 32-46. The alien God King's head was large, and his face was square as if it was made of stone. Apart from the coldness in his eyes, the cruel smile on his face was not obvious. After all, a God race clansman with stony skin like him had facial paralysis. It would only be obvious if he made an exaggerated expression or action. There was almost no reaction on his face if he made a subtle expression, although it seemed a little funny. However, Yan Tiangang and the many God lords did not dare to laugh. They all maintained a respectful posture and stood with their heads lowered. Could not be helped. Their previous experience had given them an indelible shock and fear. Many God lords did not want to recall that scene. Whenever they thought of it, they would tremble in fear. This matter had to be explained half a month ago. That evening the sun was setting. The last rays of the setting sun shone on the mountains. Yan Tiangang and 24 God lords were flying above the mountains, rushing towards the great Yan imperial capital. At that time they were only a few 100,000 miles away from the imperial capital. They would arrive in 4 hours. Now that they were about to return to the imperial capital, they were very relaxed and had long since let down their guard. Previously, they had suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of Ji Tianqing in the Green Jade Palace and were humiliated. In order to survive, Yan Tiangang and the leaders of the 4 major sects and the noble families worked together to stop Ji Tianqing and cover the escape of 20 God lords. These 25 God lords escaped the Green Jade Palace at their fastest speed and managed to save their lives. However, their injuries were very serious and they were extremely weak. After escaping the Cloud Sea's secret realm and flying southeast for 7 days, they could not hold on any longer. Under Yan Tiangang's arrangement, they hid in a secluded place and recuperated for 10 days. When their injuries stabilized and they recovered more than half of their strength, they continued to rush back to the imperial capital. Along the way, they did not dare to let down their guard, guarding against Ji Tianqing at all times. Now they were about to return to the imperial capital, and Ji Tianqing had not appeared yet. Everyone secretly sighed in relief, rejoicing that they had survived a disaster. Of course, the leaders of the 4 major sects and noble families had discussed this with Yan Tiangang. This time, everyone had suffered such a huge setback in the Green Jade Palace. Not only did they suffer heavy losses, they were also humiliated to the point that they were covered in cuts and bruises. No matter what, they had to find Ji Tianqing for revenge. The 5 top experts gathered together to discuss countermeasures and plans, secretly plotting how to deal with Ji Tianqing. But at this moment, a strange person suddenly appeared in the sky to the left of the team. It was a giant that was 10 feet tall and looked like an iron tower. He was wearing a bronze armor that was mottled with rust, and he was dragging an ancient halberd that was covered in rust. This person looked very strange. His face, neck, and hands under the armor seemed to be made of stone. As a result, his entire person was like a small mountain of stone, extremely sturdy and heavy, giving off an extremely strong sense of oppression. However, even though he looked heavy and clumsy, his speed was frighteningly fast as he flew through the sky. The way he traveled was also very special. Unlike the many Sir Gods, who were covered in divine light and streaked across the sky as fast as lightning, he simply took a step forward and ran across the sky. However, with every step he took, he could teleport 1,000 miles away. Moreover, he could continuously teleport and teleport again and again. It was as though he didn't know fatigue and his divine power would never dry up. Seeing this scene, Yan Tiangang and the other Sir Gods were shocked and in disbelief. From what they knew, even a peak Sir God could only teleport 10 times consecutively at most, a distance of no more than 10,000 miles. After teleporting 10 times, they would have to circulate and regulate their breathing. Otherwise, their divine power would be greatly depleted, and their divine body would be damaged. However, the stone giant in bronze armor wasn't affected at all. Yan Tiangang and the other Sir Gods were surprised. At the same time, they realized that the stone giant's strength was extremely terrifying. He definitely surpassed the Sir God realm, and was a legendary godly king expert. Thinking of this, everyone was overwhelmed with emotions. They were filled with excitement and couldn't help but exclaim. The same thought appeared in the minds of many people. Oh my God! Godly king! An unparalleled godly king has appeared. The legendary godly king expert has appeared. I'm actually lucky enough to see it with my own eyes. In our great Yin Empire, we haven't seen a godly king expert for at least 3,000 years. To be able to see it with my own eyes today is a great blessing. Haha, we've seen a godly king with our own eyes. We're really lucky. When I return, I'm going to tell the others. I'm so proud. Everyone was excited. Only Yan Tiangang and the leaders of the 4 major sects and families calmed down quickly after their excitement. They had a bad premonition and frowned. Why would a godly king expert come to the great Yin Empire for no reason? Moreover, looking at the movement of that foreign race godly king, he seems to be heading toward the imperial capital. A godly king expert is enough to destroy the entire imperial capital. Why is that godly king going to the imperial capital? He wouldn't be harmful to the empire, right? The other Sir Gods didn't have much foresight and were only interested in being excited. However, Yan Tiangang and the 4 leaders had different statuses. Naturally, they had more foresight and thought more. They didn't know if their worries were effective or if they were unlucky enough. Thousands of miles away, the stone giant that was teleporting crazily suddenly stopped. He stood in the sky and slowly turned around, looking at everyone with an indifferent gaze. Actually, a godly king expert's divine sense was very powerful. He had already sensed Yan Tiangang and the others when they were 70,000 miles away. However, he seemed to be thinking about something and ignored Yan Tiangang and the others. However, it was different now. As the 2 sides got closer, the stone giant discovered that Yan Tiangang and the others were all peak high god lords. Moreover, they were all dressed luxuriously and had extraordinary bearings. They were obviously people in power. Thus, the stone giant turned around and flew toward them. Yan Tiangang and the 20 Sir Gods immediately stopped in their tracks. Even the dumbest person would realize that something was wrong. They turned around without hesitation and ran with all their might. However, it was all in vain. Just as they were about to scatter and run, the stone giant waved his bronze halberd and released a dark golden divine light that covered the sky. Swoosh! Swoosh swoosh swoosh! The bright dark golden divine light formed a halo of light that covered an area of 500 miles and descended from the sky. Swoosh! Just like that, a dark golden curtain that covered an area of 500 miles was formed in the blink of an eye. Before they could run, they were enveloped by the golden light curtain. They rushed to the edge of the light curtain and attacked it with all their might, trying to create an opening to escape. However, they were overestimating themselves. The golden light curtain was very tough. Even if they used all their strength, they couldn't shake it in the slightest. Under everyone's worried and fearful gazes, The stone giant arrived above the light curtain and looked down with a sinister smile. Strong ants, I am very happy to meet you. From now on, you are all under the command of the mighty Yen King. Chapter 32:47. The stone giant's voice was sonorous and forceful. It sounded like metal clashing against metal. This was a special characteristic of his race. It made his voice even more penetrative and intimidating. Yen Tiangang and the other divine lords finally knew that he was called the Yank Divine King. Even though the word strong ants sounded particularly harsh to the ears, it was still not enough for them. However, when the Sir Gods thought about it, they felt relieved. To a Divine King expert, everyone below the Divine King level was an ant. The Divine King level was the peak of this world. It was a powerful existence at the top of the food chain. Although Yen Tiangang and the other Divine Lords were very close to the Divine King level, there was still a big gap between them and the Divine King level. At best, they could only be considered as a slightly stronger ant. Yen Tiangang and the other Divine Lords didn't feel angry or humiliated. They only felt fear in their hearts. They were worried and anxious about what would happen next. At this critical moment, Yen Tiangang was still able to remain calm. He calmly looked at the Yank Divine King and said in a neither servile nor overbearing tone, Lord Yank Divine King from afar, this is the territory of the Great Yen Empire. The Great Yen Empire welcomes guests who come from afar, especially a distinguished Divine King like you, who is an honored guest of our empire. Please remove this seal, Yank Divine King. We are willing to serve you if you have any orders. Yen Tiangang lowered his attitude and showed sufficient respect to the Yank Divine King. The leaders of the four great sects and families also understood why Yen Tiangang did this and agreed. After all, they couldn't afford to offend the Divine King in front of them. They could only treat him well. If they angered him, they would all be in trouble. Yen Tiangang thought that since he was so humble, the Yank Divine King would at least show some respect, right? As expected, the Yank Divine King stared at Yen Tiangang. After carefully sizing him up, a playful smile appeared on his face. He waved his hand and removed the light screen that covered the sky. He said with a smile, very good. Old man, you are very tactful. The imperial capital of the Great Yen Empire is 500,000 miles ahead, right? Judging from the direction you're flying, you should be heading to the imperial capital as well? After the dark golden light screen was removed, Yen Tiangang and the other divine sovereigns heaved a sigh of relief. Yen Tiangang hurriedly answered Yang's question. That's right. The imperial capital is 500,000 miles ahead. We also need to return to the imperial capital. If I may be so bold as to ask, Your Majesty, are you also going to the imperial capital? What's the matter? The Yank Divine King grinned coldly and his tone became even more mocking. Blood, flesh, and mud splattered everywhere and sprayed onto the bodies of the surrounding divine lords, dyeing them bloody. An eighth heaven realm divine lord was so weak in front of the Yank Divine King. He couldn't even withstand a single blow. This sudden scene shocked everyone. They were so scared that their guts and livers were torn apart, and they were trembling in fear. Several divine lords were so scared that their faces turned pale and cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. They subconsciously turned around and ran. However, the Yank Divine King didn't chase after them. He waved his hand again and shot out a golden light. Swoosh! A giant golden palm appeared, carrying dozens of laws and divine powers. It descended from the sky and captured a divine lord. Whoever dares to run will end up like him. The Yank Divine King shouted coldly and squeezed another divine lord. Blood splattered everywhere. Instantly, the other divine lords who were running for their lives were so frightened that they stopped in their tracks and flew back obediently. This was because they could clearly sense that the Yank Divine King had released an invisible divine power that had sealed off the area within a radius of 10,000 miles. They couldn't escape at all. Two divine lords were crushed in a row. The scene was bloody and horrifying. Everyone was terrified and in despair. Yen Tiangang didn't dare to lie anymore. He hurriedly bowed and apologized. I was foolish. Please calm down, Your Majesty. I'll tell you the truth. I'm the fifth emperor of the Great Yen Empire. I've long retired behind the scenes and am respected as a patriarch. The Yank Divine King smiled even more happily. So you're the patriarch of the great Yin Emperor. That's even better. From now on you're my slaves. If you work for me wholeheartedly, not only will you be spared from death, but you'll also be rewarded by me. If you're disobedient and lazy, I'll kill all of you. Chapter 32:48. In order to intimidate Yin Tiangang and the others. As Ku Divine King said this, he used his giant golden palm to grab a divine monarch who was severely injured and weak. He crushed the divine monarch into a bloody mist on the spot. Since this divine lord wasn't strong enough and wouldn't be of much use, it was better to use him as a warning to others. Bang! A bloody mist blossomed. That divine lord didn't even have time to scream before he turned into a bloody pulp. Yin Tiangang, the 4 sect masters, and the family heads were all covered in blood and looked to be in a sorry state. However, they were afraid and didn't dare to act rashly. They didn't even dare to wipe off the blood. Everyone was filled with fear and despair at the Yank Divine King's strength and brutality. They completely gave up any thoughts of resistance. We will obey your majesty's orders and serve you loyally. Yin Tiangang tried his best to remain calm and took the lead to bow to show his loyalty. The other 21 divine lords came back to their senses and hurriedly followed his example, bowing to show their allegiance. The Yank Divine King was very satisfied. He nodded with a cold smile and said, "Very good, at least you know what's good for you. Don't cry. It's your honor to be able to serve this king. Not only you, but also the forces under your command and the entire Great Yin Empire should feel honored to be able to serve this king. You should know that this king is the ruler of a region. Who knows how many emperors of empires are lining up to serve this king?" Hearing this, Yin Tiangang and the other divine lords hurriedly squeezed out smiles that were uglier than crying and loudly said things that went against their will. "It's our honor to be able to serve your majesty." Just like that, 22 divine lords, including Yin Tiangang, became the Yank Divine King's slaves. The Yank Divine King was anxious to find the thief and retrieve the treasure, so he didn't waste any time. He looked at Yin Tiangang, the 4 sect masters, and the family heads and asked them about the situation. Did any other divine kings enter the Great Yin Empire in the past month? The Yank Divine King asked with a frown. Yin Tiangang hurriedly replied, "Your Majesty, no. How honorable and dazzling are divine kings. The Great Yin Empire is located in the northernmost region, and there hasn't been a god king for several thousand years." The Yank Divine King's frown deepened as he asked, "However, I can trace the aura of the treasure and confirm that the thief is still in the Great Yin Empire. Let me ask you again. Has there been a god king expert in the Great Yin Empire?" Without waiting for Yin Tiangang and the others to reply, he added, "Let's not talk about the divine kings that were born tens of thousands of years ago. After all, that dog bastard is only a lesser divine king. His foundation is still shallow." After his reminder, not only Yin Tiangang, but the 4 sect masters and patriarchs all answered in unison, "Divine King Azure Jade." Yes, in the past 10,000 years, the Great Yin Empire has only produced one Divine King Azure Jade. According to Lord God King, only God King Azure Jade meets the conditions. God King Azure Jade? Yank narrowed his eyes, a cold glint flashing in his eyes. He asked in a low voice, "That name sounds familiar. I seem to have heard of it before. By the way, is the Divine King Azure Jade's surname Chao?" Yin Tiangang hurriedly nodded and answered with certainty, "Yes. Divine King Azure Jade's surname is Chao. His real name is Chao Qingyu." "It is indeed him." Yank Divine King revealed a sinister smile as his eyes flashed with a cold glint. Seeing his reaction, Yin Tiangang and the 4 sect masters and patriarchs exchanged glances, feeling shocked and worried. Under the eyes of Yank Divine King, they did not dare to discuss through voice transmissions. However, through eye contact, similar thoughts appeared in their minds. Heavens! Divine King Azure Jade is still alive? He actually returned to the Great Yin Empire? I heard Yank Divine King say that Divine King Azure Jade stole his treasure? He fled back to the Great Yin Empire? No wonder this guy came to the Great Yin Empire. so he came to pursue Divine King Azure Jade. It's over. Divine King Azure Jade provoked such a terrifying expert. He will bring a calamity to the great Yin Empire. Just as the 5 nobles were filled with shock and worry, Yang Divine King asked again, since Chao Qingyu is the great Yin Empire's god, it's only natural that he fled back. Who knows where Chao Qingyu's cave abode is? There was no need for Yin Tiangang and the other 4 to answer this question. Every divine lord present knew. Immediately, someone scrambled to answer, Your Majesty, Divine King Azure Jade's cave abode is in the Cloud Sea Mystic Realm in the northwest. 20 days ago, we even entered the Azure Jade Palace and just returned from there. Hearing this answer, Yang Divine King was overjoyed. He grinned and said, Ha! It's really wise of me to recruit all of you. Kid, I think highly of you. This is your reward. With that, Yang Divine King took out a grayish-brown rock and threw it to that divine lord. That divine lord was overjoyed and hurriedly bent over to receive the rock. He bowed and thanked him excitedly. He used his divine sense to probe the rock and found that it was a special divine stone. It was very precious. Moreover, there was a divine king-level mystic art recorded in the rock. Perhaps this was only a low-grade divine king-level mystic art. Moreover, it was the most common type. However, this was only for divine kings. To all divine lords, it was still a priceless treasure. With this low-grade divine king-level mystic art, as long as one could comprehend it thoroughly, there would be more hope of breaking through to the divine king realm. That Sir God was overjoyed. He kowtowed to express his gratitude. Thank you, Your Majesty, for bestowing me with this divine king-level mystic art. I am willing to be your slave and listen to your commands. I will be at your beck and call. Previously, the 50 factions had racked their brains and suffered a lot to enter the Azure Jade Palace. In the end, not only did they not get anything, but they also lost so many soldiers and generals. The casualties were so heavy. Now that they had met the Yang Divine King, they would be rewarded with a Divine King-level mystic art, if they performed well. This made that Divine Lord extremely excited. He was dead set on following the Yang Divine King as his lackey. The other Sir Gods were envious when they saw this. They were envious and jealous. Therefore, someone immediately shouted, Your Majesty, I am willing to lead the way to the Azure Jade Palace immediately. The other divine lords reacted and shouted in unison, I also know the way. I am willing to lead the way for Your Majesty. It was not just the divine lords. Even the 4 sect masters and family heads were eager to give it a try. Seeing this, Yin Tiangang was secretly anxious. However, there was nothing he could do. Sigh. This bunch of bastards who forget righteousness at the sight of profit. They are really blinded by greed. No matter what, Divine King Azure Jade is also a citizen of the Empire and the pride of the great Yin Empire. Now that the Yang Divine King is here to deal with Divine King Azure Jade, these bastards are willing to be lackeys and accomplices instead of protecting Divine King Azure Jade. Although Yin Tiangang was very angry, he was powerless to stop or refute. This was because he knew that under the temptation of a Divine King-level mystic art and treasure, all divine lords would lose their rationality and dignity. In fact, even he was a little tempted. If not for his special status, he would have already. Chapter 3249. The Yang Divine King's threats and promises made many divine lords willingly submit. However, not only was he scheming, but he was also very stingy. Even though everyone was eager to show him the way, he had no intention of rewarding them. Only the lucky one at the beginning received a gray rock and was rewarded with a king-level divine ability. The others were mad with jealousy, but there was nothing they could do. They could only work harder and serve the Yang Divine King more diligently in order to be rewarded. Just like that, the Yang Divine King led the 22 divine lords and rushed toward the Azure Jade Palace. In any case, he had achieved his goal. There was no need for him to go to the great Yin capital. He only wanted to reach the Azure Jade Palace as soon as possible, kill Chao Qingyu, and take back that supreme treasure. At the entrance of the Azure Jade Palace, the 22 divine lords led by Yin Tiangang clustered around the Yang Divine King. They looked like lackeys. The Yank Divine King's sinister laughter resounded through the sky like muffled thunder. However, there was no reaction from the Azure Jade Palace. Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao and Ji Ku, who were setting up the divine formation and reinforcing the defensive formation, naturally heard the Yank Divine King's voice. Moreover, the three of them released their divine senses to check the situation at the entrance and saw the Yank Divine King, Yin Tiangang and the others. The three of them immediately changed their expressions. They frowned fiercely with grave expressions. Damn it! I guessed right. Yeah, that Divine King chasing Chao Qing, you really did find this place. Yin Tiangang and those divine lords really deserved to die. They actually became lackeys for that Divine King and brought him here. Yun Yao and Ji Ku were very angry. They wanted nothing more than to kill Yin Tiangang and the others. Ji Tianqing had long expected that the Yank Divine King would come here. They were mentally prepared. However, the return of Yin Tiangang and the others was beyond their expectations. One Divine King expert was already a headache. Coupled with the 20+ Divine Lords, the Azure Jade Palace's situation was even more dangerous. Damn it! We've already completed 10 divine formations. We only need 2 more to reinforce the defensive formation. Unfortunately, that damn Deity King actually came at this time. Ji Ku said angrily. Ji Tianqing only used his spiritual sense to look at the situation outside the door, and then concentrated on casting the array. Upon hearing Ji Ku's words, he replied calmly, "It's fine. Let's ignore those bastards for now and continue setting up the array formation." Yun Yao asked worriedly, "Will that work? How long can the gate of the Celestial Palace last?" Ji Tianqing said in a low voice, "It will take the 3 of us at least 3 days to complete the last 2 Black Tortoise Divine Sealing arrays." Although the array formation at the gate of the Celestial Palace has been modified, if those people attack with all their strength, they definitely won't be able to last for 3 days. When the 2 women heard this, they became even more worried, and the worry between their brows became even more pronounced. Ji Tianqing comforted, "You don't have to worry too much. Let's just do our best and leave the rest to fate. I'll wake the others up, and everyone will cast the array together. It should save a lot of time." In any case, Lin Shui Bailong, Nie Feiyun and the others had already been in seclusion for a while. Their mental state and strength should have more or less recovered by now. As expected, after Ji Tianqing took out the divine ship and divine pagoda, and woke everyone up, they all appeared one after another. Swoosh! Swoosh swoosh swoosh! Compared to before they went into seclusion, the tiredness on everyone's faces had disappeared, and their energy had also recovered by a lot. After everyone had arrived, Ji Tianqing briefly explained the current situation and the situation they were in. When everyone heard that a deity king had brought Yin Tiangang and the others to the gate of the Celestial Palace, they all felt nervous and anxious. However, when everyone saw Ji Tianqing's calm and collected expression, their hearts calmed down a lot. As long as Ji Tianqing could keep his composure, they would be much more at ease, and their hearts would be filled with confidence. Thus, Ji Tianqing explained his thoughts, plan, and method of setting up the array formation to everyone. He arranged everyone's positions and formations, and everyone performed their duties in setting up the divine array. For everyone, with the experience of modifying the reincarnation array, setting up the Black Tortoise God Sealing array was not difficult. In any case, they just had to follow Ji Tianqing's instructions and seriously cast the array with all their strength. The real difficulty was that Ji Tianqing could analyze the divine array so thoroughly and understand it so deeply. Soon Ji Tianqing led everyone and began to cast the array formation. At this moment, Yank Deity King, Yin Tiangang and the others stood outside the Celestial Palace for a while, but there was still no movement, and they became a little anxious. "What's going on?" Yank Deity King frowned and looked at Yin Tiangang with some displeasure, and asked, "Didn't you enter this Celestial Palace and fight inside? Didn't you tell me that there were ferocious beasts guarding the Celestial Palace?" He brought so many divine lords to the gate, and not only did he provoke them with a loud voice, he also deliberately released a powerful divine aura. Logically speaking, the ferocious beasts and deity King Azure Jade in the Celestial Palace should have sensed it long ago. Whether they took the initiative to attack or stubbornly defended, they should have reacted. 7 high divine lords, after being struck by a few dozen bolts of divine lightning, directly exploded and died. His divine body was scorched black like charcoal by the divine lightning, exploding into billions of black pieces, splashing in all directions and scattering in the sea of clouds. The other 10 high divine lords had luckily managed to preserve their lives. However, their divine bodies were also turned into charcoal by the divine lightning, and turned into black ashes that filled the sky. The divine spark survived, but cracks appeared on it. The radiance was extremely dim, flickering about. Violent shockwaves carried the 10 heavily damaged godheads, and flew toward the sea of clouds in the distance. As for Yin Tiangang, Lei Qianjie and the heaven-splitting divine lord, their situation wasn't much better than those divine lords. Although they managed to preserve their lives, their divine bodies had been destroyed and turned into ashes. Their divine sparks had survived and were only slightly injured. They wouldn't fall unconscious. Even so, Yin Tiangang and the other 4 were still shocked to the point of insanity. They all had the same thought. Is this the power of a king-grade divine array? It's terrifying. The one who was the least injured was Yank God King. Not to mention that he had already reached the 4th level of the divine king realm, and was a medium divine king. When Yin Tiangang and the others stopped breaking the array and had strange expressions, divine king Yank had already raised his guard. After all, he wasn't the great Yin Empire or the god of the northern heaven region. He had even crossed the ocean to come to the boundless heaven continent from another continent. In a completely foreign land, he had always been cautious and never acted rashly. Therefore, when the reincarnation killing formation released tens of thousands of lightning pillars, he didn't hesitate to close the bronze armor and protect himself tightly. Then he used all his power and pushed his defense to the extreme. His grayish-brown rocky skin had also turned cold and black, and was 10 times tougher than usual. He put on a defensive posture and was safe even after being hit by more than 2,000 lightning bolts. Other than using a lot of divine power, he didn't suffer any injuries. His stony skin was not damaged at all, and the bronze armor he was wearing was also intact, leaving only a few dozen shallow dents. As long as Divine King Yank spent some time, he would be able to repair the damage on the bronze armor. After a long time, the shock wave that swept tens of thousands of miles dissipated in the sea of clouds. The dazzling light of the divine thunder, and the deafening sound of the explosion gradually disappeared. Outside the gates of the divine palace, it was quiet again. The 10 severely injured divine lords only had dim divine sparks left. They all scattered and quickly ran away from the green jade divine palace. What happened next had nothing to do with them. If they insisted on staying, even the slightest ripple of the battle would take their lives. Divine King Yank didn't blame them. He just ignored them. As long as Yin Tiangang and Lei Qianjie didn't run away, he wouldn't be angry. 5 godheads flashing with divine light floated around the rock god king. They seemed to be in a state of shock, fear, and anger. Divine King Yank glanced at them and frowned at the gates of the divine palace. He muttered with a dark expression, "This is a mid-grade king-level divine array? It shouldn't be. With Chao Qingyu's strength, he shouldn't be able to set up this divine array. Plus, when he escaped back to the Great Yin Empire, he was already seriously injured and on the verge of losing consciousness. How could he have the strength to set up a new array?" Divine King Yank didn't care about Yin Tiangang and the others. He just felt that this was very unusual and had to be on guard. In fact, a thought even popped up in his mind. Who set up this divine array? Does Chao Qingyu have helpers? But middle-level divine kings are extremely rare. As rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. God King Rock was somewhat hesitant, his expression grave as he pondered. Yin Tiangang, Lei Qianjie and the others were full of worry and anxiety. They couldn't help but say, "Divine King, this is a king-level divine array. It's too powerful. Divine lords like us can't break it. Divine King, please forgive us for being unable to help." The 5 of them only had their divine sparks left. They couldn't do anything. If it weren't for Divine King Yank's power, they would have run away already. They only dared to ask because they wanted to see if Divine King Yank had the confidence to break the death array of Samsara. God King Rock collected his thoughts and waved his hand with a dignified expression. "This is a mid-grade king-level divine formation. It's not something you can touch. Stay here and wait. This king will personally destroy it. Sword pierces the 9 heavens. Sword pierces the 9 heavens. Chapter 32:51. Hearing Yang's words, Yin Tiangang and the rest heaved a sigh of relief. As long as they weren't sent to their deaths, they were willing to watch the battle. Yang Divine King walked to the gates of the Divine Palace and used his eye technique ability. Almost every Divine King expert would know 1 or 2 Divine Eye techniques. With the eye technique ability, one could clearly observe formations and see through concealment and camouflage. Regardless of whether it was setting up, breaking formations, refining pills, or forging artifacts, eye technique ability was indispensable. The grayish-brown pupils of the Rock King's bell-sized eyes immediately shone with golden light. With the support of the eye technique ability, he could immediately see through the half-meter-thick 5-colored light barrier in front of him. It contained more than 280 million meridians. The structure was incomparably complex. It seemed to be layered on top of each other and fused together. Yang Divine King could confirm that this was a genuine mid-grade king-rank divine formation. Moreover, the method of setting up this divine formation was strange and ingenious. It was something he had never seen before. He stared at the Samsara killing formation without blinking for a full 15 minutes before he could clearly see the overall structure of the formation. His face turned ugly, and his eyes narrowed fiercely as he thought to himself, "Damn it. This is definitely not a divine formation set up by Chao Qingyu. I dare to bet my life on it." Forget about him, a low-level divine king. Even if it was this king, it was also impossible to set up such a profound grand array within a month. Could it be that I guessed correctly and Chao Qingyu really found a helper? Moreover, it's a mid-level divine king proficient in formations? If that's the case, then it's troublesome. I'm afraid I won't be able to take back my Wind Thunder Soul cleansing pill. Thinking of this, Yang Divine King's eyes turned even darker. He was furious and irritable. Only the heavens knew how great of a price he had paid for that Wind Thunder Soul cleansing pill. It was his only hope of strengthening his bloodline and modifying his divine soul and divine body. It was also his only chance of becoming a high-level divine king. It was no exaggeration to say that the value of that Wind Thunder Soul cleansing pill was second only to his life and lifetime of cultivation. If he couldn't take it back, he would definitely go mad with anger. Yang took a deep breath and suppressed the rage and anger in his heart. He thought to himself, this king needs to be calm. Even if I have to be cautious, I can't scare myself. It was just a king-level divine formation which didn't mean anything. If I spend more time and effort, I will definitely be able to crack it. After this king breaks open the door and enters the palace, I will act according to the circumstances. If Chao Qingyu really has the help of a mid-level god king, even if I can't defeat him, I can still retreat and escape. Having made up his mind, the Yang God King stopped thinking about it. He stared at the reincarnation killing formation without blinking, concentrating on observing and analyzing it. Although he was a mid-level god king, he could still set up more than 100 mid-level king-grade god formations. However, he would need at least 5 days to complete most of the king-grade mediocre divine arrays. It would take at least 3 days to decipher most mediocre king-grade divine arrays. Of course, the Samsara killing formation in front of him was no ordinary king-grade divine formation. It was more complex, profound, and ever-changing. The Yank God King made up his mind. Even if he had to spend half a month, he had to decipher it. Time passed quietly. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. Before he knew it, half a day had passed. The Yank God King stood motionless in front of the door, still observing without blinking. Seeing this, Yin Tiangang, Lei Qianjia, and the others couldn't help but mutter to themselves. The 5 quintessences gathered together and communicated in secret. What's going on? The Yank God King still hasn't found a way to break the formation after so long? I don't know what kind of formation it is, but it's so powerful. I've never seen anything like it in my life. No matter what, we were almost completely wiped out this time. Even if the Yank God King breaks the formation, we won't be able to make up for our losses. Don't worry about it. We fought the Tianqing God King first, then met the tyrant Yank God King. It's already good enough that we're still alive. Suddenly, the towering wind pavilion master saw that Yin Tiangang was silent and asked, "Forefather, why aren't you saying anything? What are you thinking about?" The heaven-splitting hall master, Lei Qianjie, and the heaven origin sect master all looked at Yin Tiangang. Yin Tiangong's tone was rather grave as he sent a sound transmission. This old man is thinking of a question. Who set up this defensive divine array? How is it so powerful? Even the Yank God King can't do anything about it? According to the Yank God King, the Azure Jade God King was heavily injured and on the verge of unconsciousness when he fled back to the Great Yin Empire. It's impossible for him to recover from such heavy injuries in a month. The Azure Jade God King is a lesser God King, so it's even more impossible for him to set up this king-grade divine formation. The four experts fell silent. Lei Qianjie asked, "You mean that the Azure Jade God King has a helper, most likely a middle God King?" The heaven-splitting hall master was shocked and said worriedly, "If that's the case, the Yank God King has no chance of winning? If we become his accomplices, won't we be dead for sure?" The four experts were filled with worry. Yin Tiangang said solemnly, "No. There are only two God Kings in the entire North Heaven region. Only the region master is a middle God King. Will the region master come here? Obviously not. Therefore, I suspect that the divine formation wasn't set up by a middle God King." The four experts were stunned and hurriedly asked, "Other than a middle God King, who else can do it?" "Tianxing." Yin Tiangang said this name one word at a time. The four experts were dumbfounded and exclaimed in disbelief. "How is that possible? He's also a god monarch. How can he set up a king-grade divine formation? That's not right. It's been more than a month. That guy still hasn't left the divine palace?" Seeing that the four experts didn't believe him, Yin Tiangang said solemnly, "Although this answer sounds ridiculous, I also don't dare to believe it. However, after careful consideration, I believe that this is the only answer." Everyone was shocked. After a long silence, the Heaven Origin sect master asked, "Ancestor, what do you think we should do?" Yin Tiangang said in a deep voice, "Wait. We've already lost so much. As long as we can keep our lives, there's nothing to lose. Wait for the Yank God King to break the formation and kill his way into the Green Jade Palace. If the truth is as I think, the Yank God King will definitely kill Tianxing. At that time we'll be able to witness the death of Tianxing with our own eyes. It can be considered revenge." The Towering Wind Pavilion Master asked again, "What about the Green Jade God King? He'll also be killed by the Yank God King. Won't we also have a share of the credit?" Yin Tiangong's tone was somewhat cold. He said in a deep voice, "The Green Jade God King is a citizen of the Empire. We shouldn't be accomplices to a villain. However, the Yank God King is powerful. We have no choice but to ask a tiger for its skin. Whether or not we can contribute is secondary. The key is that we have to keep an eye on the Yank God King." Chapter 3252. Yin Tiangong's analysis caused the four experts to be enlightened, and they had an idea in their hearts. Lei Qianjie thought for a moment and asked, "Ancestor, is it possible that we can make the Yank Divine King stay and become the Great Yin Empire's backer?" The moment he said this, Yin Tiangang, the Towering Wind Pavilion Master, the Heaven Origin Sect Master, and the Heaven-Splitting Hall Master were all stunned. After a long period of silence, the master of the heaven-splitting mansion finally said, "Brother Lei, you're dreaming. Who is the Yank Divine King? No matter where he went, he would be an overlord of a region, a domain lord. What can a mere empire do to keep him?" Although the heaven-splitting mansion master's words were unpleasant, it was the truth. Yin Tiangang and the others agreed. Lei Qianjie realized that he had thought too much. Fortunately, his divine body had been destroyed. Otherwise, he would be embarrassed in such an awkward situation. At this point, the five powerhouses had a rough idea in their hearts. Although they couldn't help much, they could just watch the show. Time continued to pass. Soon a day had passed. When night fell, the Yank Divine King, who had been observing the divine array without moving, suddenly let out a long breath. Phew! His tense nerves finally relaxed. A gratified smile appeared on his gloomy face. "I see. It was truly a work of art that excelled the heavens. It was unimaginable. The divine king who set up this divine array is definitely an array grandmaster. His attainments are so deep that I am amazed. The rock divine king muttered to himself and chuckled. However, my array Dao cultivation isn't low either. I still saw through it in the end. Obviously. The Yank divine king spent a day and finally understood the structure and operating principle of the samsara killing array. Although it was only a small step towards successfully breaking the array, it was still worth being happy about. After that, he restrained his mind and started to ponder bitterly as he deduced and probed the method to break the formation. Peace returned to the divine palace. Seeing that the Yank divine king had made progress, Yin Tiangang and the others were relieved and continued to wait quietly. Unknowingly, another day had passed. Yank pondered and deduced for an entire day. Finally, he selected 3 feasible ways to break the array. Therefore, he began to use his array techniques and tried to break the arrays one by one. Swish! Swish! His palms, which seemed to be huge and heavy like rocks, waved nimbly, shooting out thousands of beams of divine light into the 5-colored light shield. As the countless divine lights entered the reincarnation killing formation, the power of the formation was affected, and the meridians of the formation became sluggish and blocked. As a result, the divine light of the 5-colored light barrier fluctuated incessantly, and the divine dragon phantom and lightning flashed continuously. The power of the array began to erupt and become very unstable. Yin Tiangang and the others sensed danger and hastily retreated 500 miles away. They were also afraid that if the divine array were to attack again, they would definitely lose their lives. 2 hours, 6 hours. 16 hours later, the power of the reincarnation killing formation went berserk. Divine light flashed chaotically, and finally, it burst forth with an attack that could destroy heaven and earth. Swoosh! Swish, swish, swish. Thousands of lightning bolts mixed with black blades of death, crimson 9 heaven-glazed flames, icy blue northern dark ice blades. 6 different colored beams of God power poured down like floodwaters, covering an area of 100 miles. The 6 different elemental powers actually merged together, multiplying and multiplying endlessly, their might complementing each other. Yank didn't dare to be careless. He hurriedly stopped trying to break the array and focused on defense. He still activated his bronze armor to protect himself. Furthermore, his stone skin also evolved into a dark gold color, and he used his strongest defensive ability. Boom! Boom boom boom. The destructive 6-colored divine light sealed the area within a radius of 100 miles as it continued to bombard the area. In just 20 breaths, Yank had been attacked more than 3,000 times. No matter how strong his defense was, he still suffered this time. After all, the 6 types of terrifying divine power simulated the 6 paths of reincarnation and possessed boundless power and profundity. More than a dozen washbasin-sized holes and more than 30 cracks appeared on Yank's bronze armor. 4 wounds also appeared on his dark gold skin, and gray blood continuously flowed out. His blood was very strange. It was gray in color and as viscous as mud, even though this was a unique inherited bloodline of the Yin clan. But Yank knew that this was also the reason why the Yin clan's descendants were destined to be unable to become high-level god kings. It was also because of this that he did everything he could to obtain the Wind Thunder soul-cleansing pill at all costs. After a long while, the brilliance of the 6 paths of reincarnation finally dissipated. The reincarnation killing array calmed down. Yank hurriedly checked the situation. His face fell and he was filled with disappointment. This was because the divine power he had injected into the array in the past 16 hours had all been expelled. The first method to break the array had clearly failed. This divine array is indeed extraordinary, Yank murmured, but he wasn't discouraged. He continued to try the second method. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. This time he used a different method. He continuously injected dazzling divine lights into the reincarnation killing array. At the same time, within the Green Jade Palace, Ji Tianqing led Yu Niao Ji Ku and the others to set up the array for 2 days and 8 hours. The continuous high-intensity spell casting and setting up the array at all costs exhausted everyone. Their faces were pale, and they were drenched in sweat. Not only were they mentally exhausted, but they had also used up more than half of their energy. They were quite weak. Fortunately, the last two miniature black tortoise god-sealing arrays were successfully integrated into the defensive array. With everyone's help, Ji Tianqing, Yu Niao, and Ji Ke completed the task ahead of time. The 12 black tortoise god-sealing arrays were integrated into different positions and combined with the defensive array. Immediately, a change occurred. The defensive array that enveloped 100 miles of heaven and earth exploded with dazzling divine light. It shook violently and fluctuated. Layers of giant waves seemed to have been set off on the surface of the five-colored sky curtain, and all kinds of mysterious scenes appeared. Divine light shone brightly, and divine power surged vigorously. There were even thousands of lightning bolts, zidian, and phantoms of the divine dragon and black tortoise flashing and appearing in the sky curtain. Such a magnificent scene made Lin Shui, Zhan Hong, Nie Feiyun, and the others exclaim in amazement. They were all dazzled. Under everyone's gaze, the 12 black tortoise god-sealing arrays were connected to each other and released billions of divine light lines. They shuttled back and forth in the five-colored sky curtain, weaving even more complicated patterns. Following this change, the grade and power of the five-colored sky curtain were continuously increasing. Everything went smoothly, just as Ji Tianqing had expected. In just a few short minutes, the defensive array had completed its transformation. Its grade had increased by one level, and it had become the black tortoise god-sealing array. Although it was still a low-grade king divine array. However, among the low king grade divine arrays, it was one of the best. Compared to before, the defensive power of the array had increased by 4 times. Sword piercing the 9 heavens. Sword piercing the 9 heavens. Chapter 32:53. Yu Niao, Ji Ke, Lin Shui, and the others had seen the evolution of the Samsara killing formation and were shocked and excited. But at this moment, when they saw the transformation of the defensive formation with their own eyes, they were still shocked and amazed. It was Ji Tianqing who opened everyone's eyes to the profoundness of formations and the wonders of changes. Most importantly, everyone had participated in the setting up of these two mystical formations. That sense of honor and pride was unprecedented. After the black tortoise god-sealing formation stabilized, Ji Tianqing ordered, "Everyone has worked hard. Go back and rest. Just leave the rest to me." Lin Shui, Godly Lord Blood Illusion, Zhan Hong, Nie Feiyun, and the others had used up too much divine power and urgently needed to recuperate. Everyone greeted Ji Tianqing and entered the divine ship in Jiutianten Absolute's pagoda to recuperate. Not only Bai Long, Ji Wushuang, and the others, even Yu Niao and Ji Ke were exhausted. The two originally wanted to accompany Ji Tianqing to face the upcoming danger. But they could not resist Ji Tianqing's persuasion, and returned to the distorted spacetime to recuperate. In the sky, only Ji Tianqing was left. He released his divine sense to investigate the situation at the gate of the divine palace. After observing for a while, he smiled and said to himself, "It seems that guy still needs a long time to break the Samsara killing formation. I have to use this time to quickly recover my divine power." Previously, he had set up formations repeatedly and his divine power was very empty. He urgently needed to replenish it. Seeing that the Green Jade Palace was temporarily safe, he also entered the distorted spacetime to recover his power. Outside the gate of the divine palace, when the five-colored light curtain that covered the sky began to fluctuate violently and transform, Divine King Yank was also awakened. He hurriedly stopped breaking the formation and retreated 100 miles away. He observed vigilantly. With his previous experience, he did not dare to underestimate the formation of the divine palace. He could only wait and see. In just a few minutes, he witnessed the transformation of the defensive formation with his own eyes. 12 small formations merged into the large formation and caused a myriad of changes. After understanding these changes, he was dumbfounded and revealed a look of disbelief. 12 small divine formations can merge with the original great formation and transform into a brand new, even more powerful divine formation. What is this operation? Formations can be upgraded like this? Divine King Yank was a little confused. He was so shocked that he was dizzy and his heart was raging waves. Ever since he had broken through to the Divine King realm, He had spent a long time studying formations. But this was the first time he saw such a formation with his own eyes. It was simply an eye-opener and he had a new understanding of formations. After the shock he quickly calmed down. Damn it! The defensive array of the Divine Palace had just been upgraded and transformed. I was Divine King's divine formation. Divine King can. Why did this king only focus on the array at the gate of the Celestial Palace, and not think of directly breaking the defensive array? When God King Rock realized this problem, he was immediately filled with regret and frustration. It's those damned ants. They misled me. He turned his head and glanced at Yin Tiangang and the others in the distance, unable to vent his anger. Yin Tiangang and the others also saw the transformation of the defense formation and were shocked. Divine King Yang's cold gaze swept over them and they all shivered. Their hearts were filled with fear and unease. They did not know that Divine King Yang was venting his anger on them in order to shift the blame. At this time, Divine King Yang faced the Divine Palace's gate and said loudly, "Which Divine King is setting up the formation in the Divine Palace?" "This Divine King Yang is the Tianquan Territory Lord. I just witnessed your method of setting up the formation with my own eyes. I am very impressed. Please show yourself." Divine King Yang's tone was very solemn and serious, as if he was asking to see a divine king with a higher status. He had no choice but to do this to test the Green Jade Divine Palace. The matter was already in front of him. The Reincarnation Killing Formation at the gate, and the Black Tortoise Godseal Formation that had just completed its transformation were all set up by that Divine King. That Divine King was currently in the Green Jade Divine Palace. Divine King Yang wanted to ascertain the other party's identity before deciding what to do next. However, the Green Jade Divine Palace was deathly silent. Not a single sound came out. Divine King Yang frowned and shouted again, "You don't want to see me? Very well. Then please answer this Divine King's two questions. First, what is your relationship with Divine King Azure Jade? Why are you helping him? Second, Divine King Azure Jade stole this Divine King's treasure. This Divine King chased him all the way here. Do you still want to protect him?" Divine King Yang was very sure that the person who set up the formation was not Divine King Azure Jade. He even secretly guessed that the person who set up the formation was very likely the Tianbei Territory Lord. This was because he had asked Yin Tiangang. There was only one intermediate Divine King in the entire Tianbei Territory. In the Tianbei Territory, offending the Tianbei Territory Lord was definitely not a wise thing to do. Therefore, Divine King Yang decided to use peaceful means before resorting to force and try to reason with him first. If he could not reason with him, he would fight with his fists. However, the Azure Jade Divine Palace was still silent. No one answered. Unfortunately, Divine King Yang's consciousness was temporarily unable to penetrate the defensive formation and find out what was going on inside the palace. If he could see, he would discover that the palace was empty. The Divine King, he had guessed, was not present. There was only a black divine pagoda in the sky. After a long time, Divine King Yang's patience ran out. He shouted with an indifferent expression and a cold tone, "Since you don't want to answer, then don't blame this Divine King for taking action. Wait until this Divine King breaks the formation, then I will talk to you face to face." With that, Divine King Yang continued to use Array Dao divine abilities to try and break the Samsara Killing Formation. He knew that the Samsara Killing Formation was of a higher grade and harder to break. In comparison, the newly evolved Black Tortoise Godseal Formation should be easier to break. However, he had already deduced a way to break the Samsara Killing Formation. It would waste even more time to observe and study the Black Tortoise Godseal Formation. Continuing to break the Samsara Killing Formation was a wise move. Swoosh! Swoosh swoosh swoosh! Thousands of rays of divine power shot out like a rain of arrows and entered the gates of the Divine Palace. Divine King Yang's all-out effort to break the formation was extremely powerful. Not far away in the sea of clouds, Yin Tiangang and the others were filled with anxiety and were discussing through voice transmissions. "Ancestor, the Divine Palace's defensive formation just completed its transformation and upgrade. This means that the Divine King who set up the formation is in the Divine Palace right now. Are we going to continue watching the show? What if that Divine King isn't Tianqing, but the Domain Lord? If the Domain Lord sees that we help the foreign races deal with Divine King Azure Jade, he will definitely clean up the sect and kill us, right? Since Divine King Yank is focused on breaking the formation, why don't we take the opportunity to escape? Yeah, this is a battle between Divine Kings. We don't have the right to participate. The 4 experts' hearts pounded and they all wanted to retreat. However, Yan Tiangang was stubborn and his attitude was very firm. We can't escape. If the person who set up the formation was the Northern Heaven Domain Lord, he would have shown himself and spoken already. The more mysterious that person is and refuses to show himself or speak, the more I believe that it is Tianqing's doing. Chapter 3254. Although the 4 experts had the intention to retreat, they still followed Yan Tiangang's lead. Since Yan Tiangang did not retreat, they could only stay and observe. Time flowed by. A day passed quickly. Yank Divine King tried the second method to break the array, but he only persisted for 10 hours before failing. Then he tried the third method to break the array. This time, he persisted for a total of 14 hours and still continued. He did not fail. The process of breaking the array was still smooth. This made Yank Divine King see the light at the end of the tunnel. His confidence multiplied and he worked even harder to break the samsara-killing array. He felt that he had already completed 70% of it and was not far from successfully breaking the array. At most, he would need another 6 hours to successfully break the samsara-killing array and open the God Palace's door. At the same time, within the God Palace, 9 Heavens Tenju Pagoda suddenly flashed with white light. Ji Tianqing appeared in the sky. Swoosh! He stood in the sky, his white robe looking brand new. His long hair hung behind his waist and was combed meticulously. Not only had he recovered his former glory, his strength and aura had also reached their peak state. At this moment, although he was not a divine king, he was more like one. He stretched out his hand to grab the 9 Heavens Tenju Pagoda, and kept it into his body. A day has passed. That fellow should have found the way to break the array, right? After all, he's a 4th stage realm divine king. It's not to the extent that he doesn't even have this bit of ability. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself and released his divine sense to investigate the situation at the God Palace's door. When he saw that Yank Divine King was casting a technique to break the array, and that the samsara killing array's power had dropped greatly, he instantly frowned. Oh, that clumsy-looking blockhead is actually smarter than I thought? Ji Tianqing was rather surprised. He continued to observe for a while and his frown deepened. I didn't expect that he really deduced the method to break the array. Although this method is a little clumsy and complicated, and it can't completely break the samsara-killing array, he has already completed half of it. However, he had already completed half of it. In at most 14 to 14 hours, he would be able to open a gap in the formation. No, I have to think of a way to stop him. I absolutely cannot let him succeed. Ji Tianqing's face was a little gloomy, and he was a little worried. After all, Chao Qingyu was still unconscious and recuperating while Lan Er was still in seclusion. If the Yank God King were to attack the Divine Palace, it would be difficult for him to stop him alone. Previously, he had wanted to remain mysterious and mislead Yank into thinking that there was a mid-level Divine King in the Divine Palace. But now he couldn't care less. He could only make a move himself and appear as soon as possible to stall for time. Shwa! A white light flashed. Ji Tianqing teleported 100 miles away and appeared above the gate of the Divine Palace. He stood at the top of the gate, on the cornice of glazed golden tiles, looking down at the Yank God King. Staring at the Yank God King, he suddenly narrowed his eyes and a playful smile appeared on his face. Ha ha ha! I didn't expect to see the Yin clan here. What a surprise! Ji Tianqing said playfully with his hands behind his back, assuming the posture of an unfathomable expert. The Yank God King, who was in the middle of breaking the formation, naturally sensed his presence. However, the Yank God King planned to ignore him and focus on breaking the formation. However, when he heard Ji Tianqing's words, when he heard the words Yen clan, his body instantly shuddered. His mind was disturbed and his hands froze in midair. Just like that, the formation he was trying to break was interrupted. He subconsciously raised his head and looked at Ji Tianqing, who was at the top of the gate, with a look of vigilance. "Who are you?" The Yank God King narrowed his eyes and asked in a deep voice, "How do you know about the Yen clan?" At this time, Yin Tiangang and the others in the distance also sensed Ji Tianqing's appearance. The 5 godhoods immediately focused on Ji Tianqing. After seeing his appearance, Yin Tiangang was overjoyed and couldn't help but want to laugh. The heaven-splitting palace master, towering wind pavilion master, and Lei Qianjia were also shocked and found it unbelievable. Heavens! It really is that bastard. Ancestors' foresight is godly. This junior is full of admiration. That kid is still in the God Palace. He was the one who set up 2 king-grade god arrays. This is unbelievable. It's hard to imagine that we've provoked such a terrifying enemy. The 4 experts were full of admiration for Yin Tiangong's accurate judgment. At the same time, they also accepted the fact that Ji Tianqing could set up king-grade god arrays in their shock. Thinking about how they were enemies with Ji Tianqing and fought for so long, they still felt fear. Yin Tiangong's emotions were far more than that. He said excitedly, "It's just as I expected. That kid set up king-grade god arrays with the strength of a divine lord. He's truly a genius. However, no matter how monstrous or heaven-defying he is, it's useless. When the Yank God King enters the God Palace, his time of death will come. We'll be able to get our revenge soon." The 4 experts also expressed their agreement and looked forward to it. As they discussed, they paid attention to the movements at the God Palace's gate, and listened to the conversation between Ji Tianqing and the Yank God King. Hearing the Yank God King's question, Ji Tianqing's smile became even more enigmatic. "Kid from the Yen clan, tell this king, where are you from?" Ji Tianqing's aura was mysterious and unfathomable. He also had the attitude of a ruler who looked down on the world and looked down on all living things. His words also sounded old and experienced. The Yank God King was stunned and revealed a look of deep wariness. Ji Tianqing saw that he was silent and asked, "You're not going to tell me? Do you think this king doesn't know that you're not a god king from the boundless heaven continent but from another continent?" The Yank God King frowned and subconsciously replied, "So what if I am? You haven't answered this, king. How do you know about the Yin clan?" Ji Tianqing still avoided answering and said in a playful tone, "The Yin clan originates from the north of the primal chaos continent. They are the descendants of ancient gods and have a true king-level bloodline. Kid, to what extent did Chao Qingyu offend you? You actually left the primal chaos continent and crossed 2 seas and a continent to pursue him here?" In fact, Ji Tianqing was also not sure what the current situation of the God realm was like. What he said were all memories from 1,000 years ago. At that time, there were 4 continents in the God realm, and the primal chaos continent was one of them. However, the primal chaos continent and the boundless heaven continent were very far apart. There were 2 seas in between and only God King experts could cross. As for the current situation of the God realm and how many continents there were, he was not sure. He said those words to test the waters. Unexpectedly, the Yank God King did not refute him. Instead, his eyes widened and he roared even more emotionally. "Who are you? Why do you know so much about my clan? If you have a relationship with my clan, why are you helping that bastard Chao Qingyu?" Ji Tianqing still avoided answering and asked with a faint smile, "You're Yank, right? If this king is not wrong, you should be the son of Rock Dragon, right? After so many years, is your father dead?" Chapter 3255. When Ji Tianqing's voice fell, the entire place became deathly silent. Yank God King was dumbfounded on the spot. His eyes were wide open as he stared at Ji Tianqing, unable to say anything for a while. Yin Tiangang and the other 4 in the distance were also completely stunned. No one expected Ji Tianqing to say such words. Not to mention why he knew about the Yin clan. Not to mention whether Yank Godking's father was Rock Dragon or not. Just the words "is your father dead?" were enough to frighten them. How could he say such words? Do you have a grudge with the Yin clan? If you really care about Rock Dragon's situation, you should ask, "Is your father alive?" You asked him so straightforwardly. Do you want to fight Yank God King to the death? Yin Tiangang and the other 4 experts were indescribably shocked, as they secretly communicated with each other. How could this be? Who is that kid? How does he know about the Yin clan? What primal chaos continent? What is that place? Could it be that there are other continents besides the one we are on? That kid is too mysterious. He actually knows a God King from another continent. Isn't this too much of a coincidence? If he has a relationship with Yank God King, would they still fight? Can we still take revenge? Yin Tiangang and the others were unsure and hesitant. At this time, Yank God King also woke up from his shock. His eyes were as cold as ice as he stared at Ji Tianqing and coldly shouted, "Kid, no matter who you are, you dared to insult my father. If you can't give a reasonable explanation today, this king will definitely tear you to pieces." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing smiled even more meaningfully. Originally, he was only guessing. However, Yank Godking's reaction proved that he guessed correctly. Yin Tiangang and the others in the distance were even more shocked and couldn't help but exclaim, "Heavens! He actually guessed correctly. Yank Godking's father is indeed called Rock Dragon. If that's the case, Tianqing knows Rock Dragon. They are either old acquaintances or enemies. If they are old acquaintances, then we won't be able to take revenge. I hope they are enemies. I still don't understand. Tianqing is just a god monarch. How can he set up a king-grade god array? How would they know the god kings of other continents? Things seem to be developing in a strange direction." Seeing the Yank God King's reaction, Ji Tianqing raised an eyebrow and said with a smile, "It looks like your father is already dead?" "That's right. You introduced yourself as Tianquan Territorial Lord. But I remember that the Tianquan Territorial Lord from 1,000 years ago was your father, Rock Dragon. You must have inherited your father's position after his death, right?" Upon hearing this, the Yank God King's face twitched fiercely, his eyes blazing with fury. His voice was almost hoarse as he suppressed his anger and growled, "Who the hell are you? Do you dare to tell me your name?" Ji Tianqing smiled and said calmly, "Tianqing. There are also many people who call me the Killing God." Tianqing? Killing God? The Yank God King was stunned for a moment. He frowned and thought for a long time. He searched through his memories but couldn't remember where there was such a person. After a while, he stopped thinking and glared at Ji Tianqing. He asked in a deep voice, "Brat, don't try to trick me. Do you dare to tell me your real name?" Ji Tianqing raised an eyebrow and said indifferently, "This is my real name. If you don't believe me, you can ask those guys." The Yank God King frowned and turned to look at Yin Tiangang and the others in the distance. Ji Tianqing and the 4 experts also heard Ji Tianqing's words. Without waiting for the Yank God King to ask, they took the initiative to confess. "Lord God King, he is indeed Tianqing. Yes, the Killing God is the nickname given to him by the people of this empire." The Yank God King turned back and continued to glare at Ji Tianqing. He sneered, "Ha ha. You want to trick me with this little trick? Do you think I will believe you?" Ji Tianqing's expression was still indifferent. He said indifferently, "It's up to you to believe it or not." The Yank God King suppressed his anger and asked again, "You know so much about the Yin clan and know my father's name. Let me ask you, are you an enemy or a friend of my father?" Ji Tianqing thought seriously for a moment and said, "Of course we are not enemies, but we can't be considered friends either. Your father wants to be friends with me, but he doesn't have the fortune or qualifications." The moment he said this, the air froze. The Yank God King's expression froze. His pupils shrank and his eyes became incomparably cold. In that instant, he restrained his aura and released an incomparably dangerous killing intent. The thick sense of humiliation caused his killing intent to soar. "Brat, you insulted my father again and again. Do you not know how to write the word death?" The Yank God King's anger reached its peak and he roared in rage. Ji Tianqing said without a change in expression, "It's a pity your father is dead. Otherwise, He would definitely give you a big slap for being so rude to me. The Yank God King was so angry that smoke came out of his orifices and he almost went berserk on the spot. You arrogant and ignorant bastard. I will crush you into pieces and tear you to pieces. Just you wait. I will break open the door now and kill you with my own hands. The Yank God King's patience had reached its limit. He didn't want to waste any more words with Ji Tianqing. He forcibly suppressed his endless anger and began to cast spells to break the samsara killing formation. He had previously broken through 50% of the formation. However, he had stopped casting spells for so long that the divine power he injected into the formation had long been disrupted and scattered. Now he had to start all over again. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! The Yank God King suppressed his anger and poured all of his divine power into the samsara killing formation. With his previous experience, his casting speed was much faster and he was even more confident. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Do your best to break the formation. I will wait for you. At the same time I will recall some things." The Yank God King frowned and asked subconsciously, "Recall what?" Ji Tianqing smiled playfully and said, "Of course it has to do with your father." "What is it?" The Yank God King was curious and asked again. Ji Tianqing smiled even more mockingly. "Take a guess." "You." The Yank God King was furious and glared at him. However, he also knew that Ji Tianqing was deliberately playing with him. Thus, he didn't pursue the matter and continued to cast spells to break the formation. As expected, Ji Tianqing didn't say anything else. He stood calmly at the top of the door and closed his eyes to rest. Judging from his expression and posture, he really did seem to be recalling some things. Time silently passed. The Yank God King focused on breaking the formation. Yan Tiangang and the others could only wait patiently. Unknowingly, another day passed. The Yank God King had already broken through 80% of the samsara killing formation. At this time, Ji Tianqing suddenly opened his eyes and revealed a playful smile. That's right, this king finally remembered something very important. Sword piercing the 9 heavens, sword piercing the 9 heavens. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.